non-agenda public comments. And with that, we will now go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Now we will go to our public comments.
Thank you, Chair. I see two hands from the public. First will be Nina Babiars, followed by Mike Bullock. Nina, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good morning. My name is actually Nina Babiars. I'm a founding member, board member of Public Watchdogs, a public advocacy nonprofit headquartered here in San Diego. I've spent approximately the last 25 years of my career in the Intelligent Transportation Systems arena, ITS, and actually have had many of those meetings in the SANDAG boardroom, of which many of you have sat before. I'm speaking this morning on talking points with regard to VMT, vehicle miles traveled. And I want to talk about and point out some of the issues that have not yet been properly researched on behalf of the public's interest. First of all, VMT, vehicle miles traveled, turns every single road into a toll road, of which taxpayers have already paid for. It converts every private vehicle into a tracking device. It bodes the question, VMT bodes—
Nina, I'm so sorry to interrupt your comments, but I just wanted to make sure, were you wanting to speak on the regional plan item specifically?
Well, you know, that's a very good question, because this issue has kind of been buried within the transportation plan. And the reason I'm speaking out in public comment is because I think that it needs to be pulled out to the awareness and these issues of concern for public privacy need to be addressed as a separate issue, because, you know, VMT has only been introduced to the public over the last, several days in the media. So if you want me to do that, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, I'm sorry, Nina. I just wanted to clarify. You can go ahead and finish your comments when you're ready. Production, if you could add a little bit of time since I interrupted to the timer, I'd appreciate it. And you can keep going.
That's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. It does turn every single road into a toll road. It converts every private vehicle into a tracking device. VMT bodes the question, who will pay for the aftermarket hardware and its installation required to perform that tracking? And are these costs yet another tax? Will the Department of Motor Vehicles also require proof of hardware installation in order to secure vehicle registration renewals? What are the penalties if a citizen refuses to comply with hardware installation in their private vehicle for tracking purposes? What software will be required to calculate VMT, and who will have the ownership of that data? Who will regulate that data collected? Will it be a private company or a public agency? Will the data then be sold for additional revenue generation? Are there any protections for the public to prevent that? The public has a right to know these issues and many more that have come up over the decades in intelligent transportation systems meetings with regard to VMT. Considering the privacy issues with regard to data and the repercussions of VMT data being collected or breached is something that this board needs to consider and conduct more research before a vote is ever taken. We're talking about, car insurance rates that will be impacted, as well as, how will the vote of the SANDAG board, with the new weighted vote of the city of San Diego and Chula Vista having 50% of the vote, be fair to North County residents who will be burdened with more VMT than those cities in the city limits of San Diego and Chula Vista. I also want to share with you that I was actually asked to participate in a VMT pilot program, which I declined, knowing that some of these risks that I just outlined have yet to be addressed. And I want to point out that many of the 5,000 or so who did, quote unquote, volunteer to participate in that VMT pilot program, where the data from that pilot program might be used in the transportation plan, Also, we're represented by the ITS companies that had a vested interest, and I believe had a conflict of interest in the pilot program outcome. And for that reason, it should be closely scrutinized. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to bring these issues of the public's concern to your attention so that you can extend the research, the public awareness, and education of the risk of VMT. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. We've had several more hands go up since Nina started speaking. So I just wanted to remind members of the public that this comment period is for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak on the regional plan item, we'll have a separate public comment period for that topic specifically. So I'm going to go on to Mike Bullock. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Sandag Board, I'm Mike Bullock from Oceanside, and I think we all understand the need for privacy, and I trust Sandag, I trust your Executive Director, Hassan Agrada, and certainly we need to define what privacy means and how it's going to be protected, and that can easily be part of any system that we use to replace the very terrible gas tax, which is not a good road use mechanism. So, but I have other comments this morning. On page 8 of the letter of September 16th, 2011 to Sandag regarding the draft EIR for the 2011 RTP are these words: Executive Order S305 is an official policy of the state of California established by a gubernatorial order in 2005 and designed to meet the environmental objective that is relevant under CEQA, climate stabilization. Again, it's designed to meet the environmental objective that is relevant under CEQA, climate stabilization. It establishes what we should all know anyway, that climate stabilization is an environmental objective under CEQA. Notice that climate stabilization is not explained. There's a reason for that. The words climate stabilization do not need an explanation. They explain themselves. The opposite of this is climate destabilization. And I hope we are clear about how bad climate destabilization is. Now, if I heard and remembered correctly, Chair Blakespear said at a Zoom meeting I was attending in response to a question I asked that she does not want climate destabilization. Her statement reflects our shared value, human survival. Therefore, it's good to hear that climate stabilization is an environmental objective under CEQA. And I have to say, Sandag missed an opportunity to educate the public about the shared value of human survival and how it depends on climate stabilization and what our climate stabilizing targets are. And the fact that the reason we have a code red climate emergency is because the first climate stabilizing target is in 2030, and it is 80% below what we emitted in 1990. Now, I think that the work that you've done is what was directed by the board. I think Hassan Agrada and his staff have done what you asked for, and you needed to ask for more, and you need to start asking for more, and you need to ask that climate stabilization be explicitly included in the work that's done.
Thank you, Mike. Next will be Cheryl Brierton, followed by Daniel White. If you're a member of the public who would like to speak on non-agenda public items, I'd like to ask that you would raise your hand by the end of Cheryl's comments that are about to begin. That way we can make sure that we have enough time for all of the items on the agenda. So I will go on to Cheryl. You can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I wanted to address the issue of growing elderly population in society as people do live longer. And I'm not sure that that's been sufficiently addressed in your planning in general. For example, caregivers who have to travel all over and can't possibly do it on public transportation, like myself and my siblings who come from all over Southern California to care for my 96-year-old mother, and take her to her doctor's appointments and such. So I saw in the paper that you were going to impose some kind of road tax to people who have to drive. And I was concerned about the impact of that, not just on the elderly, but also on families who have to schlep their children to all kinds of schools, activities. And so I guess I'm speaking to ask you to reconsider or make exceptions for these kinds of activities for elderly, disabled families, people who need to get their cars and certainly can't afford to pay extra to be able to take care of this. So thank you. I appreciate you listening to me. Bye.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. And it looks like we have 5 more people who would like to, oh, I'm sorry, 4 more people who would like to speak. And that's going to be the end of this public comment period. There will be another opportunity at the end. And just another reminder that if your comments are regarding the regional transportation plan, the mileage charge, or anything related to item 3, please reserve your comments for that time. So we'll move on to Daniel White. You can go ahead when you're ready, and Daniel will be followed by Tony.
Yes, hello. My name is Daniel White. I'm a citizen born and raised in San Diego. I kind of have an issue with the mileage tax due to I'm a family of 7, 5 children and my wife.
Daniel, if your comments are about item 3, I'd like to ask that you reserve your comments for that time. Can you please raise your hand again when we get to item 3?
Yes, I will raise my hand when we get to item 3.
Thank you. Tony, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Now, yes, thank you.
Okay, I want to thank the 60% of the board that voted last week to implement the free youth passes and began the process of making your commitment to equity more than a well-written vision statement. I spent 25 years working as an educator in high poverty communities, and I saw firsthand how the lack of opportunity for experiences outside the walls of their neighborhoods trap many young people in cycles of destructive and self-defeating modes of behavior. By giving them the ability to travel outside those walls, you will transform many of their lives. I also want to support the efforts that many on the board are putting into transforming transportation in the San Diego region. I know difficult funding decisions are part of that process, but we won't meet the climate challenges we face without sacrifices from all of us. In August 2021, UN General Secretary Antonio Gutierrez said today's IPCC Working Group 1 report is code red for humanity. It is code red for you and everyone in your life you love. You must move this climate crisis from your head to your heart. Your head will tell you a multitude of reasons why you can't act with urgency. It's not politically expedient, not economically advantageous. The wheels of government turn slowly. But if you move from your head to your heart, the seemingly impossible will become possible. If your child or grandchild was in a burning building, you would run in to save them. Well, your child or grandchild is on an increasingly burning planet. If your child or grandchild was being swept away by floodwaters, you would jump in to save them. Well, the floodwaters and sea levels are rising on their planet. Martin Luther King said, a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. You must lead by molding consensus among your constituents and the general public by speaking the truth, no matter how inconvenient that truth may be. The good news is all the solutions to moving from an extraction-based energy model to a green-based energy model, although not without sacrifice, are economically more advantageous and environmentally sane. The only ones who benefit from a mad dash like lemmings to the climate cliff are those financially wedded to the extraction model. Martin Luther King also said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I implore you to reach out with every fiber of your being and the full governmental power you wield to bend the current arc of our moral universe towards climate justice before it is too late for the children alive today and generations unborn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. The next person will be our last public speaker. We're limiting it to 5 folks as noticed on the agenda. So Mark, you can go ahead with your comments when you're ready. Mark, you are self-muted at the moment.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Mark Aaron. I am a current high school teacher, government econ, and I was just showing up to make my voice publicly heard on this current meeting. I am seeing immense connections between 18th century Gilded Age politics and political machines where unions are donating millions of dollars that they get from the expenditures that come from Standag back to the representatives that are sitting on this board. And I just want to make that to be noticed in a public forum and to be documented. It is extremely sad because the amount of spending that is happening here to the goals that are morally objectable and going forward is all going to huge corporations, and I think the public needs to be aware of that, and it needs to be on the record. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And to those members of the public who may have non-agenda public comments, if you would like to, we will provide another opportunity for non-agenda public comments at the end of the meeting today. So please do raise your hand at that time if you'd still like to give your comments. And Chair, that does conclude this item. Okay,
Thank you. We're going to take things a little bit out of order here. So we're going to go to item number 4, which is a presentation for approval of the next 3 draft board agenda meetings. So I'll hand that to Victoria.
Good morning. For your November 19th Board of Directors draft agenda, we have item number 1, which is public comment, followed by item 2, which is the executive officers report. On your consent calendar, you have approval of the meeting minutes, followed by item number 4, which is an update from Caltrans on the status of the SR 94-125 East Connectors project. Item number 5 is the Transnet EMP allocation of the $4 million for the Regional Land Management Biological Monitoring Program. Item number 6 is your standard approval of the proposed solicitations and contract awards. Item number 7 is the quarterly progress report on the Sandag Capital Program through September 2021. Item number 8, we're looking for an approve. It's approving that policy advisory committee actions. Item number 9 is a resolution to continue teleconference public meetings per the Brown Act. Item number 10 is the Chief Executive Officer's delegated action provided for information. And item number 11 is the meetings and events attended on behalf of Sandag for information. Under reports, we have several. Item number 12 is the commercial paper program revolving facility. We're looking for an approve, and Andre, our CFO, will be providing that information. Item number 13 is the Housing Incentive Program Evaluation Criteria and Call for Projects. We'll be looking for an approved. Item number 14 is the quarterly FY22 program budget update. This will be for information. And followed by item number 15, which is the potential transit extension ordinance amendments. We'll be looking for a 2/3 vote on that. Item number 16 is the approval to release the RFP for the management of the Rancho Lilac property. Item number 17, which is the last item on the agenda, is the proposed FY22 program budget amendment for the capital improvement program. We'll be looking for an adopt, and it's coming through the Transportation Committee. This concludes that agenda, and I can move on now to December 3rd. December 3rd, we have 3 items. We're still working on things, but the first one's related to a budget item to add transit to the budget coming through the Transportation Committee. The next is an update on the 125 work that the independent auditor is doing, and it's followed up by a vendor's audit that is also coming up through the independent auditor. Moving on to the December 10th agenda, item number 1 is public comments, followed by 2, which is the Chief Executive Officer's report. On your consent calendar, we have approval of the meeting minutes, followed by approval of the proposed solicitations and contract awards, followed by your standard item number 5, Policy Advisory Committee actions, which we'll be looking for an approve. Item number 6 is the TDA extension request for FY21 for the TDA audit. This is coming up also from the auditor's office. Item number 7 is the 2021 RTIP amendment 6 for regional conformity redetermination to make sure that we are in conformance with the air quality determination for the RTP. Item number 8 is the Chief Executive Officer delegated actions. And item number 9 is meetings and events attended on behalf of SANDAG. Item number 10 is information, and it's a quarterly report and the update on the financial markets through September 21. And then we have one report, last but not least, the 2021 Regional Plan Final Environmental Impact Report. We'll be looking to adopt the RTP. This concludes the December 10th agenda, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any questions. So we should go ahead and vote on these.
Sotelo Solis, move to approve.
Second.
So we'll go ahead and vote now.
I'm sorry, Chair, we have 2 hands up from the public, but I'm not sure if it's on this item or something else. I'm going to go ahead and, John Alvarado, I see your hand up, so I'm going to allow you to speak. Please just let us know if you'd like to speak on the draft agendas or if it's about a different topic. John, you're self-muted at the moment. If you'd like to speak, you can go ahead when you're ready. Okay, John is having some technical difficulties. I'll try to reach out to him individually so we can go ahead and move on to the vote if you'd like, Chair.
Yes, and also just to note, Mayor Vasquez is trying to be let in and she's not able to get in yet.
Thank you. I know Mayor Salas was having a similar issue, so I will come back to them at the end of the roll call if you needed.
Okay.
But we'll go ahead and start with, for the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Coronado, Councilmember Donovan.
Donovan, yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer. I believe, okay, so I'm sorry, Supervisor Lawson Reamer isn't with us this morning. So for the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Encinitas, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Dedina, aye.
Thank you. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Lamesa, aye.
Thank you. For the city of Lemon Grove, Mayor Vasquez.
Mayor Vasquez, yes.
Thank you. For the city of National City, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the city of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yes.
Thank you. For the city of Poway, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. For the city of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the city of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Thank you. For the city of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Thank you. For the city of Solana Beach, Mayor Hebner.
Ebner, yes.
Thank you. And for the city of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Vista, yes.
Thank you very much. And that item passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we're going to go to item number 3. So this is the 2021 regional plan. And Colleen Clemenson is going to walk us through the themes that have emerged after reviewing and responding to all the public comments that were received during the draft regional plan public comment period, and then the refinements that have been made to the draft regional plan to address those comments. So before we jump into the report from staff, I'd like to ask members of the public who want to speak on this item to please raise your hand during this presentation. So then at the end of the presentation, we'll know how many comments we have and how much time to allocate to everyone so that people can be heard. And so if your hand is not up by the end of the presentation, then you'll need to make your comments in writing and they won't be able to be received at the meeting. So please make sure and put your hand up right away. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Colleen.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear, and thank you, members of the board. Ray Major and I are going to do this presentation together. Ray's going to kick us off with the first part, and then I will wrap up. So, Ray.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Blakespear, Vice Chair Gloria, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis, and members of the board. Today, we've reached a major milestone in the regional plan. In May, we released the draft of the plan, and today we're going to share with you the changes from that draft to the proposed final plan. This plan really is an unprecedented investment in our future, and it's going to be the blueprint for how we deliver our commitments to the region. From the end of May through August 6th, we collected over 1,500 comments. These comments came from the public, it came from your jurisdictions, it came from concerned groups. These comments make up over 600 pages that you'll find in attachment 1. And we've laid that out in a grid fashion where each one of the questions and the person who asked that question is in one of the grids, and then the question is laid out, and then the answer that we provide or the response to that comment is put in there. So we've answered everything that came in during this comment period. When we look at the appendix, when we take a look at the type of comments that came in, there were lots of different categories of comments that came in. There were comments about youth opportunity passes, about the blue line, about safer bike infrastructure, a lot of comments about the road user charge, different housing options and funding. Lots of different things in this regional plan are included in these comments. The regional plan contains over 30 appendices, and it's about 4,000 pages of content. And we shared a lot of this with you over the last 6 months. Appendixes A through H are going to be covered by Colleen Clemenson, and I'm going to cover U and B. But just briefly, in Appendix A, the ones that are in pink are the ones that have the largest changes. There's substantive changes in these appendices, and we would want you to take a look at these between now and December 10th. Appendix A takes a look at the transportation projects and the programs, and more importantly, the phasing of those projects. Appendix B looks at the implementation plan, action plans. Appendix D looks at sustainable community strategy and all of that related information. Appendix F looks at the community strategy, land use pattern, and regional growth forecast. Appendix G are the public comments that you received in the appendix. And Appendix H is the social equity engagement and analysis. Before I hand it over to Colleen, I'd like to go over some of the information that has changed in Appendix U and V, which are the cost estimates and the funding revenue strategies. When we came to you in May, we presented a $163 billion plan, and you can see that represented in the figure on the left-hand side. The proposed final plan is also $163 billion, but there have been some shifts in terms of where that money is being allocated. So when you take a look at capital projects, for instance, capital projects have changed from about 87 billion to about 83 billion. The main reason for this is that there were some redundant freeway connectors that were taken out of the plan. So there's less money there. Capital or operations rather has also changed a little bit. The transit operation costs are up primarily because some of the projects are open sooner. And Caltrans has given us updated estimates on the operations of the complete corridors, and those numbers actually came down. So there's a change in there. The local streets and roads stayed essentially the same. When we take a look at programs, you'll see that there is more money in the programs in the final budget, and that is reflective of some investments in habitat programs. And finally, you'll see that the debt service number has grown also. And that's because the final plan looks at leveraging sales tax revenues to borrow against future revenue streams as we do with Transnet in order to build some of this infrastructure that we've been talking about. Here are the possible revenue sources that are listed in the plan. In the draft, we had identified about $165 billion worth of revenue sources. In this final plan, we identify about $172 billion worth of revenue sources. You'll see some of the categories have shifted. The one that shifted the most is the road usage charge, or the VMT fee, as some people call it. And that shifts from about $34 billion that we were estimating in the draft plan down to about $19 billion in the final plan. This is primarily due to the fact that as we started to figure out the phasing of different projects coming online and working to sharpen our pencils on some of the other numbers that are in there, the road user charge is delayed until 2030. We had originally looked at it being implemented in 2026 in the draft plan. It now looks like with the state of California, it'll be about 2030. So that pushes that collection out further. And we also have a different series of VMT numbers that are a little bit lower that we're applying these numbers to. There's more money coming from managed lanes, and that is primarily because some of these projects that we've been looking at will be opening up earlier. And so there would be more revenue coming from them. And the plan also assumes that we will be able to leverage future local sales tax measures in order to match federal funds. And so you see federal funds have also increased from that. And there are slight changes in the state and local funding. Transnet was also updated with the latest forecasts. One of the big changes that we did between the draft and the final plan is that the draft plan presented the projects in two chunks, in 2035 and in 2050. And so we spent the last couple of months really dialing in when these things would actually be built in terms of from one year to the next. So it's the phasing of those projects. And then once we figured out the phasing of the projects, the next thing we had to do was to figure out how we would pay for those. So you see that the revenue sources have also changed. But this graph shows the composition of the $163 billion in expenditure and how that would come from different sources. I wanted to point out the pink slice, which represents the road user charge that has been talked about recently. It represents about 8.5% of the total revenue that has been identified for building this plan. And just in comparison sake, the blue line that you see there, that is our current Transnet sales tax revenue, and that represents about 7.7% of the total revenue that we would be identifying for this particular plan. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Colleen.
Okay. All right, thank you. So what Ray pointed out is just really how we've sharpened our pencils over the last several months on the costs, the revenues, and I'm going to go through now how this has kind of made additional changes in the plan. So Appendix A, this is where we spent a lot of time with you in the board meeting in May to go through all the details of this overall system that we're talking about and how the whole system comes together. And you'll remember there were all those tables in Appendix A, and they're organized by corridor. So we had a lot of comments about what does this all look like? So we've added maps to Appendix A that will show these corridors. This map that we have here on the slide is an example of the South Bay to Sorrento corridor. So you can see, looking at this map, all the different projects that we're talking about that make up the system for that corridor. So we have these for every corridor now in Appendix A. The other thing we did, there are phase years that are listed in the appendix. What projects would be done by 2025, projects done by 2035, and projects done by 2050. We've added phase years of 2030, 2040, and 2045, just to get a little bit more detail there. And then we align that very closely with the revenues that Ray talked about in Appendix U. And so really trying to figure out what could come online sooner and when, and ensuring that we can meet that very important greenhouse gas reduction target from the state of California by 2035. So some of the things that we were able to do by adding those milestone years would be to move up some of the rapid bus projects. Those are the things that help us meet our greenhouse gas emissions. So a rapid bus route that goes from South Bay at San Ysidro to downtown San Diego and into Kearny Mesa. An additional rapid bus that goes between Oceanside and Escondido. And then an additional route from La Mesa through Mid-City and Ocean Beach. And so these rapid bus projects could come on sooner by 2035 to help us meet that greenhouse gas reduction target. The other thing we did, and there's been a lot of comments around just how we're approaching the complete corridors. So when we talk about what's happening to build the managed lanes, we're repurposing shoulders, we're repurposing general purpose lanes so that we can get those managed lanes done in all of the major highway corridors and make sure that they're fully connected. And in the draft plan, we had places where we actually were looking at where we had to go outside that existing footprint. We've now put a policy into the plan that the goal is to stay within the existing footprint and not do any expansion. So take advantage of the median, repurposing shoulders, as I mentioned, repurposing existing lanes so that we can make sure we're accommodating those things that are really going to help us meet our greenhouse gas reductions. And that's giving priority to transit and 3+ carpools. So these are the things that you'll see in terms of changes to projects and phasing in Appendix A. So next, we want to talk about changes to transit. And one of the key things that we're looking at to change from draft to final is to move toward figuring out what it would take to make transit free for everyone by 2030. This board talked last Friday about the youth passes, the pilot project for youth passes, and wanting to actually do more. So what we're proposing now is to really drive toward making transit free for everyone by 2030. And that aligns really well with where we've had this discussion on the road user charge, which would start in 2030. So really trying to make sure that we've got viable transportation options, compelling options to driving alone by the year 2030, when that road user charge would come in. The other change from draft to final is advancing the planning and engineering for improvements to the Blue Line, which is really the workhorse of our light rail system. Right now, it takes up to an hour to get from the San Ysidro Port of Entry into downtown San Diego. So the goal is to make improvements where we're separating the trolley from vehicular traffic in various locations, possibly an additional rail line, in order to make that trip closer to 25 to 30 minutes downtown. And that's when it becomes a compelling option to driving. That's when it's truly faster than driving a car. The other thing, by sharpening our pencils, and Ray pointed this out too, that we really sharpened our pencils on the costs, we were able to incorporate the costs of constructing bathrooms at all new rail stops. And that's something that was a comment that we heard multiple times about how important it is to have bathrooms at our major rail stations. So then the next area where we focused more emphasis is on Vision Zero. And this is really about going toward no fatalities and, for bicyclists and pedestrians. It's really emphasizing safety. And so we've made changes in the plan to really bolster this, as well as in Appendix B. Appendix B is the appendix where we're laying out our early actions. And so making a strong commitment to safety for bicyclists and pedestrians in Appendix B as well. The next area of emphasis is in habitat conservation. And in the draft plan, we've had about $1.5 billion set aside for habitat conservation. It was largely to mitigate for our transportation impacts as we build out the transportation system. And in the final plan, we're proposing to double that in a way that would allow us to fully implement all the habitat plans in this region. So we'd end up with about 250,000 acres of preserved open space that we would manage in perpetuity. So that's a big contribution to habitat conservation. And I think a key here, so this shows up in the programs area, so in Appendix B. And the other thing to keep in mind here is while we focus our growth and development in the urbanized areas of the region, it allows us to really preserve more than half the region for open space and making sure that about 250,000 acres are actually protected in perpetuity. The next area where there had been a lot of questions around land use, the mobility hubs, what's the purpose of the mobility hubs? So we've provided clarifications around that in multiple places. So in Chapter 2 of the plan, we talk about the mobility hubs and the different categories. That mobility hubs are not a one size fits all. So we have a coastal mobility hub type, a gateway mobility hub type, major employment centers, suburban, and then urban core. And really a description as well as the process that we used to determine how growth could happen in each of those mobility hubs. And that is called out in Appendix F. We also did a lot of clarifying work around the difference between the regional growth forecast and the land use assumptions that we're making in the regional plan. And I think most of the board members who have been with us in previous plans are aware of how we do a regional growth forecast. We work closely with each of your each of the local jurisdictions, your planning directors, to understand what's in your local plans, and then use that information to forecast out what growth would likely look like under current plans. The sustainable community strategy land use that we've used to develop this plan is different than that. And what we did is looked at all these mobility hub areas. And just to give you a sense, the acreage, the mobility hubs, when you look at the overall acreage, make up about 5% of the region, or about 200 square miles. And then when you look at each of the mobility hubs, they range in size from close to 2 square miles, and some of them, like Palomar Airport Road, are closer to 17 square miles. So they really vary in size dramatically. And the idea is that we, in our approach to putting together that land use scenario that was used for the plan, distributed housing units in accordance with the RHNA, and then focused as much as possible in these urbanized areas. It's also important to note that these are considered conceptual areas. We are putting aside funding in Appendix B, nearly $500 million for planning and capital improvements in mobility hubs. And actually, we'll be coming to this board next month with an item to start a call for projects for $6 million for willing jurisdictions that want to work with us now on refinements to the planning around the mobility hubs. We also have really called out the importance of this being a collaboration between SANDAG and local jurisdictions, and that ultimately local jurisdictions have land use authority. SANDAG has the ability to provide incentives so that we can truly bring land use and transportation together in a way that preserves open space, in a way that reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and in a way that helps us meet our social equity goals and reduce traffic congestion throughout the region. So a lot of detail here added in Appendix F in the plan and also in Appendix B around land use and the mobility hubs. The next area are innovative pilot projects. And so this is, we've been talking about all kinds of technology and how we can utilize technology through flexible fleets to close that first and last mile. And we're proposing a number of pilot projects to test this out, to see how it works in different settings. We've got one underway right now in the city of Chula Vista. We had been working with Carlsbad on a pilot project as well, and looking to do more of these throughout the region. And those are all in Appendix B. Okay, so just a summary, cost and revenue changes. So these are appendices U and V. We refined the cost estimates by sharpening our pencils. We pushed out the road user charge to the year 2030, when we could hopefully also have free transit for everyone in place. We added a new 0.5-cent sales tax, regional sales tax assumption, and that allows us to really bond against future revenue so that we can get more of the capital investments done earlier in the plan. And that's how we were, and that's really by bonding against future revenue. So those assumptions were not in the draft plan. In terms of projects and phasing, as Ray mentioned, there were some redundant freeway connector projects that we're able to take out. As a result, we've added studies to advance the Blue Line, trolley enhancements. We added more detailed phasing for projects that can be seen again in Appendix A. And then we really are clarifying the intention to work within the existing footprint for all improvements within the highway corridors. Transit, to move toward transit to be free for all by 2030. And then Vision Zero, really highlighting the region's commitment to safety. We added 2 new bike projects, the Choice Creek Bikeway and the North Coast Bike Trail. Both of those projects have now been added, and by sharpening our pencils in the cost estimates, we were able to do that. I just went through everything we talked about with land use and the mobility hubs, the increase in investments for the habitat planning to fully fund our region's habitat plans, and then the innovative pilot projects. So all of this really comes together in a plan where we are going to address traffic congestion, just as we set out to do at the very beginning, to address social equity in a very meaningful way, and to meet our state and federal mandates. And this plan will do just that. We're talking about an unprecedented investment in our region, $163 billion investment, and providing a system that works for all of us. We talk about this so often as kind of this collection of projects and a system, but it's really about the people. And it's connecting us to where we want to go, to where we want to be, and creating a cleaner and healthy environment for all of us. So with that, we are going to be bringing the draft plan and posting that. So the final draft plan will be posted on November 30th. We will also be posting the final EIR on November 30th, and all the responses to comments on the EIR. And the plan will come to you on December 10th of this year. This timeline lays out everything that kind of got us to the point of where we are today, which really started within February of 2019, this board asking your team here to develop a bold new transportation vision for the region. We were able to get state legislation passed to give us 2 additional years so that we could do this in a very thoughtful way, a data-driven way, and applying the 5 big moves as 5 big strategies to put this plan together for you. Since last February, we did multiple workshops to focus on how pricing works, how we use data to develop the plan. We talked to multiple partner agencies on how we will work together and how this plan can help all of you as local elected officials meet your climate action goals as well. This is a foundation for all of you to work from. So with that, I'm pleased to be able to share with you a very short inspirational video about the plan. And when that wraps up, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Blakespear, to take the next step with the meeting.
Where to?
Let us show you.
to the 10,000 connections that bring San Diego together.
To the people and the places that make this region like nowhere else.
These connections get us to our jobs.
To the homes we live in and the neighborhoods we visit.
But they're much more than that. They're part of a bigger plan.
A transportation plan that gives San Diego more options.
More access and more ways to be together.
What's more is that we're not starting from scratch.
We're taking what's already working and making it better.
With big moves towards new technology, the future is in reach.
So how do we do it?
With big dreams, smart moves, and by including everyone.
It's a plan that will drive us and move us.
But most of all, it will connect us.
Okay, Chair Blakespear, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much to the staff for all of your very hard work, taking public comment, responding to it, talking about it verbally, and keeping everybody up to date. We know it's been a serious commitment of our resources and time here at Sandag, and we're very interested in meeting those climate goals and equity goals and congestion relief goals. And so thank you so much to the staff for putting together this great presentation and the regional plan. I know we have a lot of public comments. We're going to do 2 minutes per public commenter. And I see that Mayor Salas has her hand up, but then is that a quick question or did you have a board comment?
I did have a comment. So did you want me to remain the comments later or actually there is a question involved in what I'm thinking about.
I'd like to take all the board comments after the public comments. So unless there's a kind of a clarifying question, I can call on you first right after the public comment if you'd like to do that. Okay, and then same for you, Mayor Vasquez. I'm going to take board comments after public comments, Mayor Vasquez. So did you have a question or a comment?
Oh, I have a comment.
Okay, so I'll take you as well after Mayor Salas and the rest of the board members. Okay, so let's go ahead and call on the public comments, 2 minutes each, and we will end the continual raising of hands. So this will be the end of when you can decide you want to make a public comment, and comments can be taken in writing as well. So let's go ahead, Francesca. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I had 38 hands up at the end of the presentation, so that is where I'll end calling on folks. If I do not call on you during this period, as the Chair mentioned, you can submit your comments in writing to me at clerkoftheboard@sandag.org, and any written comments submitted will be made part of the meeting record today. So I'm going to go ahead and call on John Alvarado first. John will be followed by Ray Stapley. John, you can go ahead whenever you're ready, and you have 2 minutes. John, you're self-muted at the moment. If you can unmute yourself,
How's that?
Perfect. Go right ahead.
You know, I'm really concerned. My name, once again, is John Alvarado, and I run a nonprofit organization called the Good Neighbor Project San Diego. We work with about 3,500 kids and their families here in Barrio Logan, right next to the freeway. This last year, when the schools were not open, the kids who ordinarily would have taken the bus and would have gotten their food, they couldn't. So the school called me up, representing about 7 different schools, and I would pick up the food and deliver it to homes, and in the worst case scenario, to a street corner for homeless, delivering all this food. Now, I was spending over $1,000 of my own money just in fuel each month. How is it that a nonprofit is going to have to absorb a 4% or 4-cent fee? Is there some other way we can do it for nonprofit organizations? It's going to be a huge impact on families who have no other option than to drive from the different communities that they're from because there is no mass transit right where they're at. Please take this into consideration. There's got to be some way through the state or whatever that we can go ahead and somehow not penalize the nonprofits, or for that matter, the folks who have to drive. Thank you so much, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I understand why you're doing it, and but there's got to be some kind of accommodation for us that work so hard to make a difference. My family's been here in Barrio Logan for over 100 years, and I've been here 71 of those years. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we're going to move on to Ray Stapley. Ray, you are self-muted at the moment. You can go ahead whenever you're ready. And we'll go to Gary Whaley after Ray.
I don't have a comment at this point. I apologize if I raised my hand. It was unintentional.
No problem at all, Ray. Thank you so much. Okay, Gary Whaley, we'll move on to you next, and you can go ahead when you're ready. Gary, I see your mic is open. You can start your comments whenever you're ready. Okay, Gary, I think is having some technical issues, so I'm going to move on to our next commenter. I'm sorry, I don't see a name. All I see is ICEJSD.org. If that sounds like you, your turn is up, and you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. My name is Phil Petrie. I'm with the Interfaith Coalition for Earth Justice, and I want to thank the board and the SANDAG staff for their hard work on this regional plan. I believe it is the best regional plan we've ever had, transportation plan we've ever had to come before us. But I also want to encourage SANDAG to take further steps to reduce emissions and to support transit equity. We need to do everything we can about climate change, meeting our climate action goals, and so forth. And I want to address something very specific, which is the issue of bike lanes. My wife teaches at USD, excuse me, and she bikes to work whenever she teaches. So she has to go down into the valley and back up again. She is very, very aware of how much safer she feels when she's in a protected lane. And of course, in some places, there are no bike lanes at all, let alone a protected lane. She passes virtually every day the ghost bike that is right now down on Camino del Rio South for the cyclist who was killed there, I think about 2 months ago. So we do not want any more cyclists killed on the road. They are doing the right thing by biking and having zero emissions, getting to and from places. And a lot of people will want to bike, the safer that we can make it. So I would urge you to make it as safe as possible and to really prioritize that for all of us. And the last is just a big picture point about change. Small changes like fees of using the road, and I know those can still be punitive, are nothing compared to the kind of change that we will see with climate change that we are seeing. This is the radical change that we face right now. And if we don't get this tackled, we are going to be in the soup. So we need to do everything we can on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Our next commenter will be B. Mittermiller, followed by Pamela Hetherington. B, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair Blakespeare and members of the board. My name is B. Mittermiller, and I'm with San Diego 350. I would like to talk today about focusing comments in this period. We need to be talking about solutions for fixing our transit system, lowering greenhouse gas emissions, and doing everything possible to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Details about the plan can be hashed out later. And today is not a day where anybody will be voting on the plan. It's simply information. It is undeniable that we are in a climate crisis now. This year alone, as of Wednesday, a total of 8,239 fires have been recorded, burning just under 2.5 million acres across the state. We are in a drought that leaves Southern California at risk for more fires before the year is even over. We are out of time to address this climate emergency. Transportation is the source of nearly half of our emissions in the county as a result of over-reliance on private vehicles. This is also an equity issue for those that depend on public transit. We need a world-class transportation system, and this plan must be a long-lasting investment in our communities, equity, jobs, and our future. SANDAG has made a good start, but I urge you to do even more to reduce emissions and support transit equity, including adopting the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group's 10 transit lifelines. Our communities and our families elected all of you to work together to solve problems. Climate change is a novel existential threat to us all. Please don't waste valuable time by taking your eyes off of our common goal, survival. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next commenter will be Pamela Hetherington, followed by Councilmember Joe LaCava. Pamela, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Blakespear and board members. My name is Pam Hetherington. I'm on the board of directors of the Environmental Center of San Diego. We strongly support the revisions staff has proposed for the 2021 regional plan. In addition to our support for the visions laid out in the regional plan, we realize that full funding for our regional habitat plans is foundational to its success. This is our last best chance to address the climate crisis. The environment is the foundation for all living things. The bold vision before you becomes whole with these new changes. It allows San Diegans to act locally while thinking globally before it's too late. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Pamela. Next, we'll go to Councilmember LaCava, who will be followed by Deborah Knight.
Good morning, Joe LaCava, Council Member, City of San Diego. Chair Blakespear, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to make a brief comment this morning. I want to start by expressing my appreciation for the work that has gone into the regional plan and the transformative measures included in this draft, and how it aligns with our shared vision of climate action, decarbonization, good jobs, and social equity. I want to thank Mr. Ekrada and staff for making this the basis of the regional plan. In concert with the decarbonization of our transportation system and planning improvements to overall mobility, thank you for your commitment to maintaining the region's existing open space and preserving our natural environment. In the Tri-Canyon area, the City of San Diego has preserved natural habitat, offers an urban escape, and protects our watershed. As I've discussed in my 2 letters to the board, there are minor modifications to the regional plan that can preserve this valuable open space and reduce costs. The first is to pursue the north-south alignment of the Coastal Rail Trail adopted by the City of San Diego and already partially funded, and remove the draft east-west alignment through Rose Canyon. No longer should we be looking at something akin to the Pacific Coast Trail, which is scenic and impressive, but will be hardly used. Every dollar for bicycle lanes have to be focused on commuters and daily trips. The other is to constrain proposed improvements to State Route 52 between the 5 and the 805 to its current footprint and protect Marion Bear Memorial Open Space Park. While these 2 requests within my district may be small compared to the scope of the regional plan, they speak to the balance of creating a world-class transportation system that preserves the unique and natural aspects of the San Diego region. Thank you again for the time this morning, and thank you for all the work to advance this plan.
Thank you, Councilmember LaCava. Next, we will go to Deborah Knight, who will be followed by Laura Hunter. Deborah, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, good morning. My name is Deborah Knight. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of Rose Canyon, which is part of the Save Marion Bear Park Coalition. I urge the board today to act to save Marion Bear Park. Marion Bear extends for 3 miles along the south side of the 52 between the 5 and 805. It's one of the City of San Diego's oldest open space parks. Its trails provide an escape to nature for urban residents of all ages It's also part of the city's MSCP. The regional plan proposes to add 3 additional highway lanes to the 52 right next to Marion-Bear Park, plus multiple new highway connectors in all directions to and from the 5 and 805. Please remove these today from the draft regional plan. Sandag staff have told us, don't worry, they will try to use the existing footprint to add this massive amount of new highway in these 3 miles. That is not the point. The point is 3 more lanes of traffic noise and air pollution along the edge of an open space park. 3 more lanes of highway trash and polluted stormwater into San Clemente Creek, which flows right into Mission Bay. 3 more lanes of impacts to wildlife and to the wildlife corridors that connect Marion-Bear Park to Rose Canyon and MCAS Miramar. You will hear much about the cost of the RTP. I am here to tell you about the high price Marion-Bear Park will pay if you add 3 more lanes of highway right next to it, and the high price that the San Diegans who love Marion-Bear Park will pay. The regional plan proposes 406 new lane miles of highway. Surely today you can remove these.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker will be Laura Hunter, followed by Dorothy Martin. Laura, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, and thank you so much for taking my comment. I did file a letter, but I just wanted to add my voice to thank the staff for your responsiveness. You know, it's not every day that we get, real significant changes like this in response to public comment, and I really appreciate it. I want to just voice my support for the revisions that are proposed. Particularly, I'd like to focus on the bike and pedestrian safety measures. We really want to help encourage the kind of behavior we're asking everybody to engage in, plus the free transit. I think that's wonderful. Obviously, I'm very involved with habitat plans, and they're a very important part of allowing our region to plan in the best and most effective way for infrastructure development, sustainable agriculture, and habitat preservation. We know now after the pandemic how important access to open space is for people. It's important for the species, and now we know that it's important for climate sequestration. I understand that not everything is, perfectly understood, and there's still more dialogue to happen, but I really hope that you will support these measures so that the dialogue can continue. I just want to end with just one short comment. COP26 opens next week, and the President Alok Sharma says there's no viable pathway to net zero emissions that does not involve protecting and restoring nature. I think this plan, these revisions will really help us get to that point. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Our next commenter will be Dorothy Martin, followed by Carolina. Dorothy, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, very good. Good morning, Chair and members. I'm from Vista. My name is Dorothy Martin, and I'm glad for this opportunity for public comment. I'm new to your public meetings and very nervous right now, but I'll try to make it short and sweet. And I did submit a letter, but via email just before the meeting. And I've submitted my comments to my mayor, Judy Ritter. I'd like to say I agree with the goal of clean air. I think that's something we can all agree on. And I lived in LA in the 60s, and it was not too clean back then. And San Diego was a destination because of the clean air. So I think that we have something to be thankful for in San Diego County, and even LA has seen a lot of good progress in that area of clean air. So I want to go on to, I do oppose the vehicle mileage tax for various reasons. And one is I feel that being in North County, it's taking a lot of revenue from North County and applying it to projects in other parts of the county that we don't see a direct benefit. And I think that's kind of taxation without representation. And also there's a lack of accountability there because we don't see where our money is going. And then secondly, I feel that it's an invasion of privacy, and an earlier comment was talking about this. There's some privacy concerns there that I think are very difficult to resolve because of cybersecurity. And thirdly, I feel that it would punish me, for example, as a driver of a personal vehicle for my business, personal, and recreational use of those vehicles. And I think that is something that is an infringement on my freedom. And fourthly,
Thank you, Dorothy. Apologies for having to stop you there, but we do need to move on to the next person. Carlina, you're up next, and Carlina will be followed by Craig Jones.
Good morning. I am Carolina Martinez with the Environmental Health Coalition and the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. I am here to commend SANDAG for a regional plan that has been proactive at including solutions for environmental justice communities. I am also here to ask that SANDAG elevates its role to support jurisdictions in the making of more affordable housing. We know that the planning is burning and our current transportation system is heavily contributing to the fire, damaging our lungs and failing the low-income communities of color who depend on it the most. Overall, 93% of San Diego's low-income residents do not have access to fast and frequent transit, and the proposed regional plan provides critical lifelines to change that. We commend SANDAG for the proposed final plan changes, which include more frequency, 24-hour service, a Blue Line Express study, bathrooms, a purple line that serves City Heights, a system that is able to evacuate people to safety during an emergency, free transit by 2030, but we still need free transit for youth 24 and under now. The plan includes critical lifelines, but we cannot ignore that housing. We cannot continue to ignore housing when planning for transit. While anti-displacement, a displacement study and an incentive program are set forward, the housing emergency calls for all government to lead with an emergency response solution. We request that the regional plan include more proactive mechanisms to guarantee that communities of color will not be displaced as a result of transit improvements. For example, committing to build all necessary public infrastructure to alleviate costs for developers so they can build more affordable housing. We can no longer afford to displace the housing responsibility solely to the jurisdictions. Every government agency needs to integrate.
Thank you, Carlina. And again, apologies for having to stop you there, but we do need to move on. Craig Jones, you'll be next, followed by Mary Skyokura. Craig, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name is Craig Jones. I'm a representative to the Social Equity Working Group, representing the Alliance for Regional Solutions, which represents interest in North County. I appreciate the presentation this morning. It appears that the tweaks, the changes to the draft regional transportation plan are positive. They'll advance our efforts to address climate change, and they will be good for equity. And I really appreciate that. I've been following the media coverage in the last couple of days. I've got a message for Supervisor Jim Desmond. Jim, if we build this system for this plan, yes, people will use it. They will use public transit more because the system will work. It'll compete with a private car, and it'll make it desirable for people to do this. Regarding the vehicle mileage charge, this will replace the current gas tax. Gas taxes, which is a per mile charge that we pay now, will phase out. And we'll need to replace the gas tax. That's what this vehicle mileage charge will do. And this is, again, an issue of equity. For drivers of electric cars like myself, if we don't have a mileage charge, then we won't be paying our fair share. So this is a way of assuring equity. There are ways to protect interests and the concerns that have been voiced this morning. So please, let's move forward and make this positive change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next will be Mary, who will be followed by Bob Leiter. Mary, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, board members. VMT violates citizens' constitutional rights to privacy and places an undue burden on your constituents who can least afford a mileage tax. Bike lanes have been horrible for the environment. Now in the East Village, at any given intersection, cars are stopped in 4 directions while the bike lane has a green light. Car exhaust is spewing into the air while no one is using the bike lanes. Cars have to now circle the block 10 times before finding a parking spot, using more fossil fuels and adding exhaust fumes into the environment. Ironically, your presentation depicted the corner of 5th and Juniper. I recently sat in a parking spot nearby while my daughter was in a local business. During the 45 minutes that I was there, not a single bike rode up the 5th Avenue bike lane. Kevin Costner was wrong. Just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. Congratulations to Hassani Krata and the board for your misguided waste of taxpayer money while adding to environmental problems. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Next, we will go to Bob Leiter, followed by Noah Harris.
Hi, I'm Bob Leiter, and I'm speaking today as a resident of the city of Poway. First of all, I want to congratulate Sandag staff on preparing an excellent draft regional plan. I support the written comments that were submitted by the city of Poway by David DeVries, the city planner. And I'm glad that he suggested that the Scripps Poway Parkway and the South Poway Business Park become a designated transit corridor and that multimodal safety improvements be made to State Route 67. I also want to thank Sandag for including a commitment to adopting a regional framework for climate resilience. My family and I have lived in inland North County for over 30 years, and we have some serious concerns about the impacts of climate change on our communities, including the increased frequency and duration of wildfires, increased flooding risks, increased health risks from extreme heat, and major impacts on the natural environment. And so I'd request that the final regional plan include the following specific commitments to climate adaptation. First, provide technical assistance to the cities that have not yet been able to complete the state mandated updates to the safety elements of their general plans, and also the new requirement for environmental justice elements for their general plans pursuant to SB 1000. I understand that Southern California Association of Governments is already providing this service to their local governments. I'd also like to see Sandag commit to a leadership role working with the Regional Water Quality Control Board to prepare the necessary updates to the San Diego Basin Plan and the 11 water quality improvement plans, and to assist the county and the cities in obtaining the necessary funding to make the necessary stormwater improvements and management programs. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Noah Harris, who will be followed by Mike Bullock. Noah, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair and Board. This is Noah Harris with Climate Action Campaign, calling in support of the 2021 Regional Plan. Transportation accounts for more greenhouse gas emissions than any other sector in the region by far. If we are to achieve zero carbon as soon as possible, which the most up-to-date climate science says is necessary to stave off the worst impacts of the climate crisis, we have to shift people out of their fossil fuel cars and into more sustainable modes of travel, such as biking, walking, and transit. This is a key strategy for climate action and transportation justice. One item of discussion today has been the road usage charge, and we want to urge the board to consider the following. First, the RUC would be meant to replace the gas tax, which will decline sharply with the transition to electric vehicles. This will be a crucial funding source for future transportation projects. Also, it would be deeply inequitable to continue relying on the gas tax with the transition to EVs. Working class communities tend to drive older, less fuel efficient cars, while EVs are expensive and inaccessible for many, especially transit dependent riders. Also, EVs will not address congestion and they still cause pollution and wear and tear on our roads. The 2021 regional plan is a critical step towards a more equitable, climate just transportation future. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next, we'll go to Mike Bullock, who will be followed by Ariana Federico. Mike, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Honorable Board Chair and members, Mike Bullock, Oceanside. I support the 5 big moves. There are changes I would like. One is to adopt a strategy to get a parking system that stops discriminating economically against those that don't drive. I'm a member of the Oceanside Bicycle Pedestrian Committee. I'm not authorized to speak for them. However, I fully support their letter requesting specific projects in Oceanside. I would like to highlight the 2 that are in Oceanside's mobility hub. The first is the Coast Highway Road Diet and Incentive Zone to extend from State Route 76 to Morris Street. The incentive zone has more density, more height, and less parking. I thank Councilman Rodriguez for his strong support of this project when it was approved by the City Council. The corridor is what's cool about Oceanside. It has a sprinter station and is only 2 blocks from the transit center. It goes by the City Hall. The city may become the first employer in the world to operate their employee car parking for the financial gain of its employees. The second project is to connect the coast neighborhoods to a high trip count destination shopping center with a bicycle pedestrian bridge over I-5 in the Vista Way, Kelly Street area. Again, these projects are in the middle of Oceanside's bicycle hub. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Ariana Federico, who will be followed by Michael Beck. Ariana, you can go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ariana Federico. I am a lead organizer with Mid-City CAN, and I currently work with our transportation team, ITCH. We are requesting that the board move forward with the commitment to evaluate free transit for all by 2023, and that it commits to funding youth opportunity passes 24 and under as soon as possible. We're just also here to appreciate and support the 2021 regional plan. It has been an experience in ensuring that our communities are included, in especially the 10 transit lifelines. I just also want to address that we need to make sure that there are anti-displacement strategies that protect low-income communities of color that are living near the transit corridors. We want to make sure that our communities are here to stay while also participating in these plans that are really changing the region of San Diego. For 24 and under, we really do need for that to be funded as soon as possible to increase ridership, to ensure that we are supporting our young people that were hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. It also promotes the reductions of the gas house emissions. And overall, the road usage charge would replace the gas tax. And it's really important to address that this regional plan is here to address the climate issues that we are seeing now. And if that's what it takes, that is what will need to happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Michael Beck, who will be followed by Megan Flaherty. Michael, you can go ahead whenever you're ready. Michael, you're self-muted at the moment. Are you able to unmute your microphone? I'm going to go on to Megan Flaherty then, and Michael.
Sorry, can you hear
Oh,
me?
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Michael Beck, San Diego Director of Endangered Habitats League. I'd like to thank in particular the staff for their hard work and engagement, and particularly your executive director and upper management that have created a culture really of responsiveness as reflected in the changes that are in front of you today. As Laura Hunter said, this is not a common experience of ours to see this kind of responsiveness, so much appreciation. We strongly support the changes that are proposed, and they're making critical improvements, including the full funding for the habitat plans, which will have a significant impact, not just on the biodiversity related issues, but on climate change, build on this permanent green belt that is developing within even the urban or suburban areas of San Diego County, and assuming the responsibility of protecting our amazing biodiversity in perpetuity. This funding would build on previous SANDAG commitments and efforts towards these habitat plans. And you'll see an example of this on your December 10th board meeting agenda. This natural open space is vital to maintaining a high quality of life as the region grows and develops. This is not something you see in many places in Southern California. And it's our hope that 50 years from now, kids will be able to look out the window of whatever type of transportation system they're in as they're going down I-5 and still be able to see mule deer in the green spaces along this corridor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Megan Flaherty, who will be followed by Balin Hernandez. Megan, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Megan Flaherty. I'm with the San Diego Audubon Society. First, I want to echo some of the comments by Laura and Michael Beck regarding the many benefits for natural habitat and wildlife that is going to come out of this plan, especially the funding for the implementation of the MSCP and protection of our natural lands. That's a really big win, and we really appreciate that. We do have some concerns, however, about some of the additional lanes, especially nearby Marion Bear Memorial Park. Similar to what Debbie said, any increase in traffic there is definitely going to impact that park, as well as the wildlife and the water quality, air quality. That water all ends up in the bay, and we want to have as clean water as possible in that watershed. There is a little bit of confusion because the additional lanes will be within the existing footprint, but there will be the construction of new connectors, concrete connectors, which we're very concerned about how those are going to impact the already extremely squeezed wildlife corridors on either end of Marion Bear Park. So that kind of speaks to another concern that we have, which is just that we should be making sure that this regional plan is protecting and not negatively impacting our network of wildlife corridors throughout the county, because wildlife already have a pretty difficult time getting from point A to point B. So if the staff could look into removing those additional lanes alongside Marion Bear, we would really appreciate it. Or looking at other alternatives that are not going to negatively impact that wildlife corridor. But overall, we really appreciate all of the hard work, and thank you for being able to comment today.
Thank you, Megan. Next, we'll go to Balin Hernandez, who will be followed by Steve Gelb. Balin, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, members of the board and staff. My name is Balin Hernandez. I'm the policy advocate with Mid-City Can. First, I want to thank everyone for your incredible work on the regional plan. We are looking at a very comprehensive document with ambitious yet necessary and achievable goals. Second, I want to express our support for a change made to the drafts. We support the proposal to evaluate free transit for all by 2030. And we also ask that as a step towards that goal, you commit to funding youth opportunity passes, meaning no cost transit for youth ages 24 and under as soon as possible. And lastly, related to the land use and housing aspects of the plan, we're concerned that there's not enough anti-displacement strategies. Therefore, we ask that you please ensure the regional plan has strong anti-displacement mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Steve Gelb, who will be followed by Bill Tippett. Steve, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hello? Oh, come on. It's happening again. Margaret, could you help me here?
Steve, we can hear you if you'd like to go ahead and start speaking. Otherwise, I'm happy to give you a moment if you'd like me to come back to you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware you could hear me.
No worries.
The last time I tried to call in, I wasn't able to get through. Anyway, thank you so much. My name is Steve Gelb. I'm with San Diego 350, and I'm a grandfather concerned for the future of my grandchildren. The climate crisis doesn't care about politics. Without a major course correction, some or even much of the Earth will become uninhabitable in the future because of extreme heat, severe weather events, crop failure, and inadequate access to water. That future is a hellscape that we must avoid. I urge the board to adopt and quickly build upon the 2021 Regional Transportation Plan. I take transit in San Diego as much as possible, and I experience how frustrating the current system is. There's a bus that can take me near my home, but the connection at the Fashion Valley trolley station often requires a 20 or 25-minute wait. I walk the mile home up a steep hill instead of waiting, but most people can't or won't do that. A friend visiting from Germany wanted to go to the beach. It took him hours to get there by transit. Please continue to elevate the 10 transit lifelines, which were developed by climate justice communities. In particular, be sure to include anti-displacement strategies in future transportation plans to maintain the character of these communities as their transit is improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we'll go to Bill Tippett, who will be followed by David Guerrero. Bill, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Bill Tippett, representing the Southwest Wetlands Interpretive Association. And SWIA has advocated for the protection and restoration of our region's natural habitats, particularly wetlands, for over 40 years. And as other speakers have said, natural habitats are an essential component of our greenhouse gas emission reduction efforts, and it would complement the RTP's transportation and land use approaches to reduce emissions. So we support the current plan, which would be improved by the proposed changes and clarifications you've heard about today, and it represents a necessary shift from inadequate prior RTPs, so we support it. In particular, we support the increased plan investments to fully support this region's habitat conservation plans to add to the acquisition and management. We also fully support the idea of a policy that keeps all future transportation system improvements within the existing developed footprint, removing redundant freeway connections and advancing transit and active transportation projects, which will need soon a bond or a sales tax that will help advance those issues, including improving the Vision Zero safety and equity. One thing that's very concerning, though, is that because of the scope, timing, and interrelationships of all of these complex parts of the plan, and the plan's acknowledgement that zoning and development decisions for specific parcels and development projects are within the local jurisdictions, land authorities, this places a huge burden on SANDAG to effectively monitor, evaluate, report on, and fix any glitches between what's expected and what's being produced. So we really want to work with you at the next phase in the EIR to improve the monitoring, managing, and reporting section of the plan. But let's not don't let the desire for perfect interfere with getting something done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be David Guerrero, followed by Gretchen Newsom. David, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes. Good morning, Sandag. My name is David Guerrero. I have lived in City Heights since October of 1981. I love this area, and I have seen this area change in many ways, sometimes positive ways, and not many positive ways too. but I truly believe in the positive change happening in City Heights, and we need more. First, I would like to thank Sandag for the regional plan. We need a bold plan for the future of San Diego, and including projects like the Purple Line. It would make a huge impact for City Heights and for connecting the region. One of the downsides of City Heights is seeing so many people that have been displaced and end up homeless and out of work. Displacement makes people have to travel farther to work, medical appointments, and errands. And that is why I believe that the Mid-City Corridor Plan will have a huge benefit for the transit-dependent communities like City Heights residents, as well as tourists coming to City Heights and Little Saigon. I want to thank you for including the anti-displacement study and incentive programs in the regional plan. I cannot emphasize how important it is for San Diegans and its communities to get the support they need going forward. Thanking you again, David Guerrero.
Thank you. Next up is Gretchen Newsom. The commenter following Gretchen, I can only see your phone number and not your name. So it's a 760 number that ends in 752, and I will unmute you after Gretchen speaks. Gretchen, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Gretchen Newsom on behalf of IBW 569 and our 3,600 union power professionals and electricians. As we have said many times before your board, we must change our path to preserve the future and quality of life for generations to come, which is why we are so very pleased to see the 5 big moves introduced and now pleased to see a new, bold regional transportation plan developed in alignment with those values. We now have a real plan to expand transit, make more efficient use of our highway system, and meet San Diego's climate goals. These smart investments will also create thousands of local jobs and ensure a better quality of life for all. As the plan outlines, now is the time to make strong, immediate investments in transit, like rail line buildouts and the increase of transit frequency, all while expanding our network of mass transit opportunities, including those youth opportunity passes. We are pleased to see that the plan has gotten better and better, and we stand united with our partners in urging you to implement strong, immediate investments in transit, climate action, job creation, and lifeline community connections. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be the person with the phone number ending in 752, and you'll be followed by Katie Meyer. And your mic is open. You can go ahead when you're ready. It looks like that person may have put their hand down, so it might have been up. Oh, maybe not.
No, there I am.
There you go. Go ahead.
Hello, Paula Stager, Artistic Laser Productions. Based on what I've heard so far, my comments have actually changed a bit. I was dead set against the transportation tax based on the fact that our business goes from, anywhere ranging 40 miles to 150 or 200 miles each way to do our work. And often that requires doing it twice, one to site survey and one to do the show. However, I was unaware that this tax will be replacing the gas tax. So that makes sense. However, I'm still against it because the ability to enforce it is going to be a nightmare. I don't think that's going to work. As a consequence, we're actually going to lose funding money. Now, one gentleman who drives an electric car made a very good point that it will allow them to be a more equitable share. So here's what I propose. Leave the gas tax on, we pay for what we use, and then and you can probably calculate what would be a fair amount based on, miles driven. Everybody knows that. You can check with insurance companies to find out how many miles, whatever. You can find a way and then come up with a fair price, one-time charge added to the registration of electric vehicles. I think that's an approach that would make a lot more sense because trust me, people will disobey. They will not get the monitors in there. And not to mention, the monitors are going to be, again, one more thing that's hackable. I deal with that a lot in my business, trying to prevent hacking, and we don't.
Well, I'm so sorry to cut you off there. We do need to move on to Katie Meyer, who will be followed by Nastasia Patton. Katie, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, good morning, board. My name is Katie Meyer, and I'm with San Diego 350. I want to thank the board and SANDAG staff for their hard work on their regional plan and for advancing their boldest plan yet and for these changes. I think it is really important that we focus on the scale of the issues at hand rather than how we will pay for the solutions. Right now, we are facing a climate emergency. We are already experiencing extreme weather, the worst drought in a century, fires, deadly heat waves, and this is just the beginning of a laundry list of catastrophic consequences for not acting sooner. As a 20-something, I am terrified of my future. I am even more terrified of the consequences of our inactions that future generations will face, who will not be able to have normal childhoods that are not impacted by devastating effects of this crisis. Right now, we are at a moment where we have a chance to mitigate some of these worst effects. Nearly half of carbon emissions in San Diego County are transportation related. Our public transportation system in its current state will not reduce emissions to the point needed and will not adequately alleviate equity concerns. We must improve San Diego's public transit system so it is a real alternative to private cars. SANDAG needs to do everything in its power to combat a crisis in this plan. Our lives and our planet depend on it. This plan is a great start, but SANDAG needs to do better in reducing emissions and supporting transit equity. And that includes incorporating the community-generated 10 transit lifelines in the plan to improve our transit system and prioritize environmental justice communities. And I think it is especially important that we look at anti-displacement measures in the plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Next, we'll go to Nastasia Patton, who will be followed by Aaron. You can go ahead whenever you're ready. Nastasia, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on with your microphone. I actually don't see a microphone icon for you, which is unusual. I'm going to move on to Aaron and then work with production to see how I can help you. So Aaron, if you'd like to go ahead with your comments in the meantime, you can start whenever you're ready.
Hi, good morning. Members of the board and chair, thank you so much for hearing my comment. To be honest, this is something that kind of freaks me out as someone that has lived in San Diego their whole life. I'm 32, and the idea of just paying more, I kind of want to ask when does the buck stop? How much is our local government trying to squeeze the residents that live in San Diego? I know climate change is the #1 concern, but we can't afford it. Like this generation, we can barely afford to take care of ourselves. How are we going to be paying for, we have the gas tax and it's supposed to be replaced by this. And the 4 cents, it's just, when is it going to stop? When is the mismanagement of funds? How much is enough? I guess I'm asking the board, how much money will suffice? And how tied do taxes have to be for residents to deal with this? In the presentation, this is a bold new vision for the region, but how is it considered being paid for? The idea, it actually was written down as assume road usage charge began in 2030. So the idea for this giant vision for the region was just going to be assumed to be paid for. And I don't like that word assume. It makes me feel as if this younger generation has to pay for the future. And I just don't think that's acceptable. And I just think California is the third highest state to live in the United States. And I just can't keep up. I just don't know how I can make a future for myself in San Diego when I get nickel and dimed left and right by local government, and we just can't pay for it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nastasia, I'm going to try to come back to you by promoting you to a panelist. If you can accept that promotion and then go ahead and use your microphone, you should be able to make your comments. While I'm working with Nastasia, I'm going to go ahead and go on to Frank Landis, who will be followed by Elizabeth Chavez Carrasco. And Frank, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, good. My name is Frank Landis, and I'm the Conservation Chair for the San Diego chapter of the California Native Plant Society. And I wanted to thank the board and the staff for doing all this hard work on trying to get this plan together, because as everybody knows, it's a horribly complicated mess to try and solve. And I wanted to make a couple comments. One is just to put this in context about the need for why it's so important to have a fully funded conservation plan. As I think we all know, if we've been paying attention to the COP26 or IPCC or all these other global efforts, conservation and the extinction crisis and global warming are two ends of the same problem. So if you're trying to balance the solution for one on the back of the other, they both fail. We're stuck with a really horribly complicated problem, and we're trying to solve it for future generations. In San Diego, as far as anybody knows, we're the most biodiverse county in the United States. What that means is we've got 1,700 plants in an area about the size of the Big Island of Hawaii, and that's about over twice as many plants as in Hawaii. But we've also got 3.3 million people, which is 19 times more people than the Big Island of Hawaii. And I'm picking on Hawaii in particular because Hawaii is currently the extinction capital of the United States. And we really don't want to replace them. But when you pack that many people into that small a space with that many species, it gets really complicated to solve the problems. And one example of how complicated it is the Marion Bear Park issue, where you're trying to cram a transportation corridor in next to a wildlife corridor. And this points out that that if you expand one, you cut the other. And so we really have to balance both of those. And finally, I want to point out, I used to do environmental science, and 30 years ago as an undergrad, I was talking about climate change at a symposium. We are decades behind. I thought when I was an undergrad, that everything I was talking about would be solved by now, and we're just starting. So we really have to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Elizabeth Chavez Carrasco, who will be followed by Eric. Elizabeth, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Chavez. I have been living in Barrio Logan for about 11 years. Thank you for including some of the transit lifelines. I am in support of the regional plan. I have been a commuter myself since high school, so I do rely heavily on public transportation for work, for school, volunteering, and so much more. Most of the places that I do need to go are more than half an hour long, so having those bathroom stops will help ease that stress. However, I am still worried about the folks in the community possibly being displaced within their own homes. I have seen families and friends who had a hard time finding those affordable housing and then ended up moving far away from their own homes. I would like to thank you again for the anti-displacement study and the incentive program. Unfortunately, there is still more work to be done. Please commit to building the infrastructure so developers can build affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Eric, who will be followed by Karen Zirk. Eric, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I have a couple of questions that I'd like answered by the board. And the first question is, does the board have a unilateral authority to impose, I don't care what you call it, a road usage charge or a vehicle mileage tax? Does the board have a unilateral authority to impose that without a vote on the people of San Diego? The other part of the comment that I wish to make is I want to thank the regional plan for doing all their hard work. I think it's really, really great. However, there is one flawed point. The vehicle mileage tax is a punitive, and I want to emphasize the word punitive, user end tax that really targets the wrong people. We should be looking at car manufacturers and car sales with low gas mileage usage. I know it might be too late to do that, but that is my personal opinion. It's very short-sighted in terms of who you're going to go after to engage in this punitive measure. The other thing is there's been several comments about the replacing the gas tax. I never voted for the gas tax in the first place, so I do not see the need to replace it. I do agree that this is a more equitable solution, but I do not agree with doing it. Thank you very much for your work, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to our next speaker, I just wanted to let everyone know that we have 10 speakers left that we'll be able to hear from during this comment period. Next we'll go on to Karen Zirk, who will be followed by Paul Jamison. Karen, you can go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Blake Spear and members of the board. My name is Dr. Karen Zirk, and I'm a resident of the city of San Diego and the executive director of the Friends of Rose Creek, which is part of the Save Marion Bear Park Coalition. San Clemente Creek runs through Marion Bear Park and flows into Rose Creek and then into Mission Bay Park. Rose Creek is already on the 303D list for heavy metals and other pollutants. At this time, I would like to request the removal of additional travel lanes and connectors on State Route 52 between Interstate 5 and 805. While staff indicates they will stay within the existing right-of-way, additional traffic, trash, and noise will negatively impact Marion Bear Park for urban residents and wildlife. Marion Bear Park has already suffered degradation and loss of habitat due to the Mid-Coast Trolley extension that removed oak trees that were over hundreds of years old because they were in the railroad right-of-way. Once the blue line opens, the noise of the trolley will further degrade the experience of recreating at the west end of Marion Bear Park. Please remove the 3 additional lanes and new connectors to protect the habitat, wildlife, and recreational experiences of the MSCP lands of Marion Bear Park. We have an ongoing issue in the city of San Diego where our open space is degraded by sandag projects, and then habitat restoration occurs outside the city of San Diego, which means that city residents who want to experience nature have to drive outside their communities to reach open space. And city residents who don't have vehicles just are shut out of recreating in open space. We need to stop degrading our MSCP lands and other open spaces within the city of San Diego, protect them for the amazing resource that they are. They provide places to cool off, get away from concrete infrastructure, give our children.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Paul Jamison, followed by Toshi Ishihara. Paul, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, this is Paul Jamison from San Diego. I support this plan and the recent modifications. I'm incredibly excited to see the free transit as part of the updated plan. I'm also thrilled about the additional emphasis on Vision Zero. I want to second the earlier comments about bicyclists being killed. You know, these are folks who are doing the right thing on transportation, reducing emissions, reducing the number of cars on the road, and they're being killed for it sometimes. So thank you for that additional emphasis. I support the plan's emphasis on alternative transit. You know, the state's requiring reductions in the VMT, vehicle miles traveled. But right now, San Diego has a transportation system that really kind of forces people to drive. And that's part of the reason why transportation is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in California. I know the road mileage fee is controversial, but it addresses the challenges of climate change by funding transportation alternatives. I'm estimating about maybe $500 per year for the average driver. That's less than $1.50 a day. And when you consider the incredible costs of climate change, which we're already seeing the impacts of, aren't our kids worth spending less than $1.50 a day on now to help prevent these massive costs down the road? I understand that's an additional cost and burden on us, but we have to think beyond just ourselves and think about future generations and the impact and the changes we can make now. Finally, there's just been a huge increase in support nationwide for actions to address climate change. The biggest part of the new federal spending bill is on climate. So this plan is a bold step that I think we'll see repeated nationwide. It's really in line with this increased importance being focused on addressing climate change. So I credit Sandag and the Executive Director, Ekrata, for their leadership on this. And I reiterate my support for the vision of this plan in addressing climate change. Thanks.
Thank you very excuse me. Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Toshi Ishihara, who will be followed by David Alvarez. Toshi, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, my name is Toshi Ishihara. I'm a volunteer with San Diego 350 and also a member of San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. I support the RP. I believe that the main objective of RP is to transform region's transportation system to address transportation justice and equity, fight climate change, and then prepare this region for the future and for the worst impact of climate change. Sandag Board has a power and responsibility to implement the bold vision that our communities need for universal mobility and to reduce pollution and greenhouse gases emissions, which I think should include road use fees, or in other words, BMT charges. I can say with confidence, maybe 10 years or perhaps 20 years from now, most vehicles on the road will be zero emission vehicles that will not use even a drop of gasoline. Many of us use public transit, but at the same time, many of us will continue to drive. Public transportation, such as buses and shuttle, will continue to use freeways and roads. So we have to come up with a means to pay for that. So we will need to continue to maintain freeway roads and pay for the price of climate change, which caused by the inaction and the ignorance of a bunch of people, including those fossil industry. Address transportation equity. For that, we will need a strategy to pay, and the road use charges should be considered as part of that strategy. I urge all board members to support the RP for our bright future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be David Alvarez, who will be followed by Roddy Jerome. David, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for the opportunity to share our thoughts. In the 1950s, a major piece of transportation entered our city and our county, and that was the Interstate 5, which had some detrimental effects to the communities like Barrio Logan. So as we're looking to the future and how we can undo some of these unjust past practices and actually do this in a way that is equitable and that is reflective of the real needs of communities. You know, the climate crisis is impacting communities like Barrio Logan the most. We have the data to show that. And so what I've submitted in a group of about 6 other community leaders, and although we've got the support from many others, is a proposal requesting that Sandag include Reconnect Logan or a freeway lid or cap as part of one of the priority projects in order to undo some of the impacts that greenhouse gas emission has in our community, pollution, and to increase opportunities to green space. I'm glad that there's a lot of space that's being protected in the plan, but there's communities like this one that don't even have access to parks. We're park deficient. We don't have that type of an amenity, and we really need that. So I'm going to ask if someone can please get some clarification for those of us in the public that got a response from Sandag staff. On page 277 is where my letter is with the request for this. and the response from Sandag staff that talks about CMCPs, mobility projects. I'm blanking on the name at the moment, but it's not very clear whether our proposal makes it into this plan or not in the reference that's made. I'd like to really understand how that process is going to work. So I'd appreciate some clarity on what that means and how we can include a project like this one in prioritization. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Roddy Jerome, who will be followed by Fran B.
Good morning, board members. My name is Roddy Jerome. I'm a resident of City Heights. We want to thank you for the funding of the pilot program that was passed last week regarding bus frequency and extended service hours for daily transit users like me that work with senior citizens that can't drive. Shorter commutes help cut travel time and eases the challenge of carrying medical equipment like limited oxygen supply and being exposed to hot or rainy weather. The pilot program is only a reflection of what is needed in our communities, and the regional plan, which we fully support, if included, will help with bus frequencies, bathrooms, the anticipated Purple Line, ER response program, to name a few things we hope you include in the regional plan. City Heights is a diverse community with good people, different foods and cultures, many refugee groups. Displacement is a concern for our community because the people that live there are who create the community. We need to protect transit-dependent community members that currently live there. We don't want people to have to move further out of transit service areas and to be burdened with long commutes to get to and from work. Everyone has to do their part to address the housing crisis. I understand that the anti-displacement study and incentive program that is included in the regional plan is a good starting place, but I feel we need to do more to protect our communities. We're asking Santa to commit to building the necessary infrastructure so developers can build more affordable housing. Again, thank you for all the hard work. Appreciate your time and the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you very much. Next will be Fran B, who will be followed by Jesus Martin Gallegos. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, hi. I'm a longtime San Diego resident, a homeowner, and a property owner, so I pay many taxes. I also have a car, and I intentionally bought a car that would be long running so that I would not have to incur, having to buy a new car, having to pay a lot of maintenance fees. I keep my car tuned up, everything that needs to be, so it can be as fuel efficient as possible. I appreciate the gentleman and the woman that we're talking about, the electric cars. To me, the bottom line is, it seems to me you're concerned that you're not going to get taxes from people that own electric cars. They have a very simple solution. Just, a certain amount of money to when electric cars are bought, and or do that to people that already have existing cars. The thing is, we don't live in an area that's really central. Like San Francisco area, BART works really well because a lot of people are going into the city. It's too expensive to go in there, and you can't find parking anywhere. San Diego area is way too spread out for this to work. And also, it's not that we don't want to help the environment. We can do everything we can to help the environment. There are carpools, there's other things, but the reality is very few people actually take public transit because, like so many people have said, it's just way too inconvenient because you have to transfer, you have to wait forever. What if you have a job that you have to go to more than one job site? It's not possible. It's going to really hurt businesses that have that. A lot of people in different fields have to go to different job sites once they get to work. So the idea is to make cars more fuel efficient for those of us that can't afford new cars, keep them tuned up, use the freeway, don't do a lot of stop and go. For people that have electric.
Thank you very much. And Fran, apologies for having to mute you there. We do need to move on to our next person, which is Jesus Martin Gallegos Munoz, who will be followed by Donald Byer. Jesus, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for
everything else. First off, I would like to thank the board for the responses to public comment. As mentioned by almost all commentators and SANDAG staff, climate change is a very pressing issue that has affected all residents in San Diego County. As a resident of San Diego District, myself, I can speak for the ever-increasing exposure to gas emissions in the communities of Barrio Logan and Logan Heights. Communities that, besides being divided by the Interstate 5 freeway in the 1950s, are still feeling the repercussions through their exposure to gas emissions. With that being said, there are needed changes to the draft plan, and for that I would like to highlight and advocate for the incorporation of Reconnect Logan into the final draft. Reconnect Logan is asking for a freeway led over the Interstate 5 freeway to connect Barrio Logan and Logan Heights in order to reduce the exposure to greenhouse gas emissions, as well as for allowing to create new parks and open spaces for the possibility of affordable housing on top of the freeway lid. Our community has been affected long enough, and for that I really urge for the incorporation of Reconnect Logan to the final draft plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to go to Donald Byer. Donald will be our last public commenter on this item. I know there are several folks that still have their hands raised, but unfortunately, we are not able to get to everybody. But if you would like to contact me directly via email or phone call at clerkoftheboard@sandag.org or 619-977-9294, I'm happy to take your comments in a different format and make sure that they're distributed to the board members and also made part of the meeting record. So we're going to go on to Donald. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning. Right now, we have a ridership of about 3% of our population on mass transit. And a big question is how much ridership is expected after this $168 billion is spent? The other point I'm going to make is with cost overruns. There are always cost overruns, especially when we're talking about government agencies. And is that calculated into these costs? The other point is electric use. There's going to be a significant increase in power usage by using these mass transit systems. And how is this project going to account for the extra power that's needed to power the system? We are already paying some of the highest taxes in the country here in San Diego County. I just went through my property taxes and paid all those, and I found that there was significant increases there. There's significant increases in gas, which means we're paying more in taxes because we're paying more money for gas. And just because we're getting a little bit of a break on, and they're not going to take away all the taxes on fuel right now, and then just adding this in, we're still going to be paying these taxes. And I can see that we need to do something, but what more can we do? How much money do we as citizens have to pay to contribute to these kind of systems where, we're going to be lucky if there's 10 or 15% usage after all this is done? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Chair, that does conclude the public comments.
Okay. Well, thank you to the public who participated today. It's really great to hear everybody's perspective. We do have a number of board comments, so I want to try to get to them because I know we have board members who are leaving or will be leaving. So let's start with Mayor Salas.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the staff that has worked so hard on developing this plan so far. Thank you to all the public that weighed in on this discussion during the different meetings that we've had and also through written communications. It's really important for us to hear all those concerns and ideas and suggestions. And what I wanted to say is, this is a bold look at the future. And it's a blueprint for the future, and that we have to understand that infrastructure and projects take years and years and years to develop. And during the time that that's taking to develop, there's technologies that are going to develop in ways that we can't even understand right now, that will allow us to implement all these different ideas that are incorporated in the plan, right? So a lot of the concerns about tracking, how are you going to do this? How are you going to keep track of this? I think that, you know, the technology will evolve so that we'll get answers as this plan goes forward. I think that it's imperative that we support this vision. You know, I have grandchildren. I worry about their future. I can see the world, that how it's changed here, the climate regionally in San Diego, and we can see it going on all around us, from, you know, the polar ice caps melting. Just the future doesn't look good unless we get a handle on climate, right? And we have to act as expeditiously as possible. And all of that means a lot of sacrifice and a lot of change in the way that we do things, a lot of change in the way that we think. But we have to do it, and we have to do it for the future of our humanity. We have to do it for the future of our economy going forward. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of changes within this plan that right now seem like another world, right? But we can go back 100 years and look at the way that we're doing things now. And, you know, who would have thought that, you know, when they were writing futuristic novels, that we would even surpass the ideas that were presented then. But I do have a concern. And the concern is for, you know, the working people that will have to use freeways in the future. And I hope that when we're developing these plans, and it's not just going to be the region of San Diego, but it's going to be statewide, it's going to be nationwide, that we take a look at the haves and the have-nots, and actually the growing middle class that is becoming rapidly the have-nots, and think about, you know, the people that can buy electric automobiles, the people that can install solars in their homes. They're people with expendable income. We look at the working class people, and they're not the ones that can afford the brand new cars. And they're even making choices today, you know, whether to choose a new electric vehicle or, you know, conventional fossil fuel driven vehicle. And, you know, the difference in the price point is pretty significant. So I hope that, you know, going forward, that not only are we looking at the plans and how they have to evolve nationwide, statewide, but what the state can do to make sure that there's some kind of program where we can, you know, encourage people to make those choices about moving to electric vehicles. So, you know, I fully support this plan. I know it's a huge change for people, and the people that are, you know, concerned about the user tax, you know, we're paying for that right now, and gas taxes are diminishing, and there has to be a way to pay for the roads in the future. And so this is what this tries to answer right now. So those are just my comments. And again, you know, staff, you've worked so hard on this plan. It's been a long journey getting to this point, and we need to move forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Salas. And now we'll go to Mayor Vasquez.
Thank you so very much. First, I want to take this opportunity to thank staff for the tremendous amount of work that has gone into the regional plan, but also many community members who took time out to participate in this process. Your input is invaluable. And also each and every board member who has been along every step of the way in this journey. The one thing that I can say is that I'm really excited to hear about the changes described by staff. And excited because this is exactly the direction we asked staff to go in. As a member of the audit committee, I value transparency, which has been the focal point in SANDAG's development of the regional plan. Now, we know that staff has published the raw data, worked closely with the audit committee and staff and work to get public input from people that live in all parts of the county. In fact, early on, I attended the East County Regional in-person meeting to hear the candid conversations that came forward from the community. And in May of this year, welcomed the public to the East County virtual meeting and introduced the draft plan for the community to give input. Also, prioritizing equality in the regional plan and including free transit is setting the stage for the region. We all contributed to this plan, and I think that it reflects what the region wants. And this is what I want my two daughters and their friends to inherit. Lastly, a renewed commitment on flexible fleet pilot projects and learning and leaning on technology and the private sector will help the regional plan deliver projects better and faster. As the regional plan moves forward, I would like to ask staff to work with me and my team to get a pilot project in my city. That would be the city of Lemon Grove. So consider that as we move forward. Now, we all know that this work was not easy, but I am confident we will not let fear steer us away from making good decisions. So let's move forward with the plan. And again, I'd like to say thank you to everyone involved.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about the history of Sandag. We've always worked together to fill the needs of all the unique needs within the county. Our unique needs have always been discussed, and there's always been collaboration that has happened to address those needs. The hostility and complete callous ignoring of many of our mobility needs these days is not only unprofessional, but it's not how a regional agency should conduct itself and run business. The voices of many of our communities are left out these days, and our needs are not being met. San Diego County residents need to pay attention to what's going on, and they deserve more. And it makes me really sad to see how many of these upgrades and these mobility issues are being addressed in San Diego City, but North County is being left out and East County is being left out. And it just really is unfair, and it's not equitable in any sense of the ideas that are happening. It really saddens me that this is where we're at today. And so I do have some questions. So there's been a lot of discussion about citizens initiatives and Sandag initiatives, and us needing 2 half-cent sales tax initiatives coming forward on top of VMT that's for everyone, not just for electric drivers. And the gas tax does remain, it's right in the funding strategy. And by the way, I would like personally, and I'm sure all of the other board members would, like an updated version of that. I think it was attachment X or V in the original regional transportation plan. We really need an updated version of that so we can have all the information that we need to move forward with that. But anyway, there's been discussion about 2 half-cent sales taxes, the VMT, and then the new managed lanes by repurposing 819 miles of current lanes, which it's a huge burden for our residents. But my questions are, has staff actually worked and started to draft a half-cent sales tax for the 2022 ballot?
I can answer that, Chair Blakespear. Let me make it very clear. You've probably seen some news about a half-a-cent sales tax that could be put to the voter next year. This policy initiative is not sponsored nor promoted by Sandag. This effort is being held by an external group That said, we are excited by any efforts to help implement our vision. So no, we have not drafted. This is not sponsored or promoted by Sandag, what you're hearing about. And legally, we cannot be investing any staff time or resources on this.
Well, if we're depending on that as part of our funding, we should be having a measure ready for the board to review. And I would like to know when that deadline would be for us to approve something at the board level for a 22 election.
If Sandag were to go for this kind of activities, absolutely, the board, we cannot move forward without the board knowing. So first step is we want to put this plan in front of you December 10th, and then we will go from there. And if this agency decide to go for a sales tax measure, the board will be the first to approve and put out.
So I guess my next question
won't happen, Mayor, before you adopt the plan.
So I guess my next question would be, has anyone from staff had any communications with member of the public, including representatives from labor unions, regarding a 1/2-cent measure as part of a citizen initiative?
No, and we're not allowed to, and we are not going to, and we have not had in the past.
Have any board members had any communications with union representatives about introducing a citizens initiative?
I can't control what the board members do, but you can ask them.
Well, I would like to go on the record, and I think everyone should, that I have not been approached by any union representatives or any union members to put a citizens initiative on the ballot or just to discuss something like that. So anyway, I guess that would be all the comments for now. Thanks.
I will urge all of board members, and obviously I already giving direction to all staff by email, that remember, this is not sponsored or promoted by Sandag. But as I said before, we are excited by any efforts that implement this vision.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Huebner.
Thanks. I was not expecting to be called on so quickly, but thank you very much, Chair. I'm really supportive of what I'm hearing. This is a plan that looks forward and most importantly considers the threats that we face from climate change. It's an indisputable fact that fossil fuels are the largest contributors to this threat in our region. And to me, it's the rationale for thinking differently about our transportation choices. So I commend this. I recognize that not everyone is going to use transit. I mean, even in New York City, I think it's just 6% of the population uses it. So I do have a couple of questions, and that is, what is the mode share now and anticipated to be in 2035 and 2050 in peak and off peak? And then if you could remind us of the greenhouse gas savings with this plan versus doing nothing versus business as usual. That's a question, I guess a couple questions. And then also just to clarify the road user charge, as Mayor Salas was mentioning, will the board have the ability to adjust who is and is not charged depending on equity issues and other considerations that we might have?
Colleen, do you want to take that?
Yes, I'd love to. So we'll start with the equity issue and the teams pulling together the GHG do nothing, what you get with this plan, and the mode share. So Mayor Huebner and Mayor Salas, equity is at the forefront of everything that we're doing. And when it comes to how a road user charge would work, absolutely, that will be critical. And this board will have a chance to weigh in on how we approach that. This board can actually set the policy on how we want to move forward with any sort of road user charge. So that could be adjusted by anything from income to maybe those who have long distance travel, say from way out in some of the more rural parts of our county. There are things that the state is actually considering where you could kind of cap road user charges at a certain level for low income folks. So there are lots of things that we'd be able to do. The technology allows us to do that. And that will definitely be at the forefront of any sort of pricing mechanisms that come into play. So, and Ray, if you want to talk about this one, so the transit mode share in 2026, which is the base year of the plan.
2016.
Excuse me. The base year of the plan is 2016. So that's where that's the starting point for the plan and the base year that we used for all of the analysis for the plan and the EIR. And the transit mode share is 3.4%. With the plan by 2035, we get to a transit mode share of 11.6%, and that goes up to 13% by 2050. I don't know if we have the GHG do nothing.
We're looking it up.
We're looking that up, but I mean, what we can tell you is that we're meeting the aggressive target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 19% per capita by the year 2035. And that is the target that the state of California set for us. We have to, this other question you asked is going to take us a minute to figure out, maybe more than a minute. So maybe we go to the next.
Okay, but I just wanted to also clarify that are these peak or off peak, or are these just an average of transit ridership? In peak, I would guess that it's a little bit higher, or am I guessing wrong?
These are all day.
This is all day, so
This
that
is all
we do
day.
have variation. So at peak, it
Yes.
would be much
Yep.
higher. All right, great. Okay, I am interested in hearing the rest, so let's not forget that. Thanks.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Gasterland.
Great, thank you. I want to really, I echo so much of what I've heard from Mayor Jones, from Mayor Salas. There's so much here for us to really, as a group, think through together. And I want to add another element to this. The city of Del Mar submitted a 32-page detailed commentary on the draft environmental impact report for the regional transportation plan. That 32-page letter has my name on it, but it was put together in close consultation and analysis with our director of planning in the planning department. And a few points from that letter really inform us here. And I'll give these examples. So for example, having details on the mobility hub boundaries, for example, is Del Mar part of the Solana Beach hub or is it not, are going to help to really understand the greenhouse gas impacts. Another is the assumptions on emissions reductions with rail traffic include assuming the railroad transportation will double, twice the number of trains, and it also assumes that Tier 4 engines will be on all the trains by the year 2025. However, the RTP has no requirement for operators to convert. So we need to be careful about our assumptions and really understand the greenhouse gas accomplishments and trade-offs. And details on that are in our commentary. Third point, incompletenesses in any study impact really understanding whether something is feasible. Small example, both of Del Mar's lagoons are missing entirely from the draft EIR. That's the San Dieguito Lagoon and the Penasquitos Lagoon. Also missing are things like Del Mar's bluff overlay zone that protects the bluffs and the lagoon, sea level rise adaptation plan, our land conservation ordinance. And since I know those are missing from Del Mar and have not informed the EIR, which means we don't have a complete analysis of greenhouse gas emissions reductions, what about other cities? Do other cities have important policies that haven't been included in this? And then I'd like to draw attention to the Del Mar Tunnel, which is missing from the draft EIR. It's not there in the geology and soils, the air quality, the land use, the project description, the biological resources, the noise, the greenhouse gas. We have a Shoreline Protection Act line. We have an LCP that's certified by the Coastal Commission, and those aren't yet in the draft EIR. So I want to draw that attention because in this RTP, there is a lot here that is good. It really steps back and asks the questions, what do we need together and each of us? And listening to Mayor Jones, I'd like to really emphasize that we need to ask about each region and interconnecting the different regions. We're a community, but we're a community of communities. So we also need to ask, why do we need it? And then once we've understood need, what do we want? And then how do we pay for it? So I want to say a little something about how to pay. Coming from a computer science background and coming from a biomedical background, I know that it's possible to do double-blinded identifiers and to track entities, where an entity is a car. And with really clever AI algorithms, and yes, my background's AI, we can, without identifying individuals, and by looking at aggregate behaviors, have suggestions for personalized driving plans. These are underway, these are in research, and it can be done in a way that doesn't violate privacy. Privacy is everything. So for example, electric vehicle cars, we can track where, for a given car, where is it charged? Is it local, is it not local? And given the local, how many charges? And then you extrapolate numbers of miles traveled from charges. However, we have to remember that sometimes if you drive a little further, you may get there faster. So we need to think hard about a blanket 4-cent a mile tax on vehicle miles traveled, and think differently about how to replace the declining gas taxes. So I would encourage that this regional transportation plan be crystal clear that as revenues decline from gas taxes, how do we pay for what we need and what we want together as a community and as individual communities? Let's be creative. And I want to echo what Mayor Salas says, the concern for working people who must use the roads and highways for their work and have excessive miles compared to someone who's going to commute to and from a place of work. We really have to think about how to balance this. And that's a social question. So I want to put these questions out there, and I'll draw your attention to our 32-page letter, and I'll especially draw attention and ask you, please look up our letter and please read for yourself page 30. Thank you.
Chair Blakespear, we do have the information that Mayor Heavner had asked about, and we have a couple of things to also share with Mayor Gasterlin, if that's appropriate.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so the question about if we didn't do anything, what would our GHG reductions be? We call this the no build. And it's kind of interesting because no build means we still finish mid-coast. We still finish things that are like in progress right now. We have a GHG reduction per capita of 6.8%. And right now our plan is showing that by 2035, if we do nothing, it's 6.8% reduction. That includes finishing mid-coast and things that are in construction now. And with the plan, it's a 20.4% greenhouse gas reduction. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. And then with respect to Mayor Gasterlin's questions, we have a whole separate process for responding to comments on the EIR. And all of those comments and responses to comments will be posted with the final EIR on November 30th. A couple of things that the mayor brought up that were really interesting about the vehicle fleet, the transit vehicles turning to electric. That isn't something that state law, Senate Bill 375 allows us to count toward that 20% reduction, but it's a really good mitigation measure in the environmental impact report to sort of further our greenhouse gas reductions. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that this regional plan helps all of you as local jurisdictions with your climate action plans, and you can take further steps to further greenhouse gas reductions through your climate action plan. So I think that was another point from Mayor Gasterlin. There's a lot in the City of Coronado letter. We really appreciate that with respect to the Del Mar Tunnel. So that detailed environmental analysis happens as we work on that specific project. And so I think we did get a lot of comments, and I don't want to speak too out of turn here on the environmental impact report, but we did get a lot of comments about wanting to understand the impacts of specific projects. And until that specific project is designed, it's very difficult to anticipate what all of those impacts would be. So that information will come as we actually work on designing the realignment of the low sand corridor. So anyway, just wanted to provide a few clarifying points, lots there in Mayor Gasterland's comments, and we will be responding to all of those and posting those on November 30th. So thank you, Chair.
If I may, Chair, just add a couple of things. On Mayor Huebner's question about the reduction. Remember that 20.4% that Colleen cited as a result of this plan does not include the things that the state takes credit for, like, for example, electric fleet. We're not allowed to take credit for conversion to electric fleet. We're not allowed to take credit for other things. And let me just say that this is, when you talked about the NO project, there's a lot of things are happening, including in the city of San Diego. All these programs, I think, combined with this investment is gonna do a great job. Finally, to Mayor Salas and Castron and others, I wanna tell you right now, guarantee you that this agency will not put in front of you any plan that will hurt the working poor, whether it's in roads user charge. There is many examples around the country where this is a big issue. And so any program we put in front of you is gonna outline a process where nobody's gonna be worse off and nobody's gonna pay a price because they live further, etc. But we're still in the beginning of this. So the detail of this is gonna come as we move forward. But I just wanna guarantee that this is a big issue. Social equity is one of the 3 pillars of this plan. You know, the challenges of congestion, but social equity and social justice is a big deal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's continue on here. So Mayor Voss and then Mayor Hall.
Thanks, Chair Blakespear. You know, there's been a sense for quite a while that San Diego wants to make driving so pricey and painful that folks are forced out of their cars, whether gas or electric, and onto public transit. Now comes the promise of free transit paid for with a mileage tax, a tax which is going to increase everybody's cost of living, whether they drive or not. The irony is, if you do coerce drivers to take transit, you won't not collect enough mileage tax to cover the cost of the free transit, and a new tax scheme is going to be required. I have great respect for Hassan and staff, and I appreciate their hard work, but this seems an awful lot like a Sandag shell game, making promises that are impossible to keep, and I just can't support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Mayor Hall.
Yes, thank you. And I would just like to start off that I think we're all here for the greater good of not only our communities, but of our region. And I would just like to take a minute to go back a few years when Todd Gloria and Mary Salas and Mayor Huebner and Judy Ritter and a whole bunch of us tried to reach out on the last time that we tried to do a initiative to support this region as a whole. And we all work together to support one another. And what I feel today is, you know, some areas need different infrastructure than others. And some of the infrastructure that perhaps we ask for in North County, and I'll be specific, you know, I-5, which was passed the Coastal Commission almost over 12 years ago at 14 lanes with a 100% approval by the board, which was a powerful statement. And so moving forward, and for many years, a lot of us have built our infrastructure here in North County, knowing that there would be this kind of infrastructure to work upon. And I say that because, I mean, I've always supported, like in Chula Vista, when we wanted to fast track the 125, we were all there for it. The border and the border crossing, we've always been there in support of, including the road infrastructure that's being built there today to get goods movement into this country back and forth. I support Mayor Gloria and the harbor and the increase of tonnage that's going to go through that harbor. And I mean, it's 350% increase in tonnage by 2050. that has to somehow get through this county. And part of that's on I-5. And so it's concerning to me that when we start to have conversations and we're trying to reduce infrastructure that has already been reduced once and trying to make everything work. And I say that because, you know, bicycling, I mean, we all are promoting bicycling. Carlsbad, we have over days that are over 2,500 bicyclists go up and down our coast. So, I mean, it's important to us. But if you don't have the right road infrastructure, you start to get vehicles coming off that. And in Carlsbad, we have Coast Highway, El Camino Real, College and Cannon, Palomar, Rancho Santa Fe, La Costa. If I-5 isn't at capacity, if they're built of what the capacity should be, if the 78 and 5 interchange isn't built, if the 78 isn't widened to 4 lanes, and we don't build the infrastructure, then vehicles start to go off that onto our major arterials, which causes major concern. The other thing, and this is a question, you know, we talk about going to use the shoulders. Has Caltrans to this day say we can use the shoulder as a lane? And who's going to pick up the liability for that? That's my first question. Is there an answer?
Does Colleen want to answer if Caltrans has approved that?
We have to work with Caltrans. I don't have an answer on the spot on that one, but happy to work with them on that.
So let me understand this. We've been working on this plan how long? And how long have we been saying we're going to use the shoulders? And we're basing this plan and its capacity on use of shoulders, and you don't have the answer to that?
No, I can, Mayor, let me just, we actually have several meetings with the head of Caltrans, Mr. Toks Amashikins, as recently as last month. So there's no secrets that we are looking at taking shoulders, sometimes combining existing lane with shoulders. And we made it very clear that's our plan. And even if we have to do that, we have to have a state legislation and federal legislation to do that. So we're aware of that. And it's not like we never want to discuss, but I want you to know the highest level of Caltrans, the head guy of the whole Caltrans, the 22,000 employees knows our plan. We discussed it with him. We had Colleen and Ray, and our team has a meeting with him for an hour and a half. Gustavo, who's in this meeting, was part of that plan. So if the impression is like we're keeping this secret, it's not. Now, is Caltrans went through all the detailed analysis of what that means? You can ask them that, but I can tell you that if you adopt this plan, that's not yet done, there will be a lot of things we're going to start immediately, and one of them is putting state and federal legislation to be able to do this.
So let me ask the question differently. If you're not able to accomplish that, are you going to go ahead and build out the freeway to 12 lanes and all the infrastructure, all the interchanges that go along with that?
Mayor, I don't think I'm going to assume the F's, but I'll let Colleen answer. Go ahead, Colleen.
Thank you, Hassan and Mayor. The way this works is we have to do a detailed alternatives analysis of all of this. So we look deeper into, what are the options? We have to do all the feasibility analysis, the environmental analysis to determine the best way to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish for the whole system to work. Everything we've done in the regional plan is at a really high level, and detailed analysis about how it gets implemented continues, just like we're doing right now with all these corridor planning efforts. We're looking at that more detailed analysis as we go forward.
So I guess, just what I'm listening, I'm hearing there's a lot of theory, but not a lot of reality in what we're doing today.
I guess what I would say is this is a blueprint, it's a vision, it's the direction the region is headed. And when the board adopts this plan, you're telling us, let's go forth and figure out how we can make this reality. And that's what we've put in front of you. So that then requires a lot of additional work. And Mayor, as you know, when you have a general plan, there's a lot of additional work that has to be done to make that general plan come to life. So I think we're in it's a very similar sort of approach.
So, it's concerning. I mean, we're going out and asking asking the region to invest $160-some billion in a plan. And a lot of this base is on safety in our local economies. And in North County, we've been waiting right now over 12 years since the I-5 passed the Coastal Commission to get that built. And so how many more years? And I mean, this has a direct impact on today's economy and the safety on our roads and infrastructure today. And you would think we'd have a little bit more certainty here. The other thing that I was interested in just listening to some past comments, we're proposing in this to do 2 sales tax initiatives, but yet the Sandag, you're not going to ask for those? I mean, help me understand this a little clearer. I mean, you're wanting one in 22 and you're wanting one in 28.
So Mayor Hall, we can have them answer that question, but we also do have 6 hands up, and I know we're going to lose our quorum at right around noon. So we do need to allow other people to ask questions and make their comments too. So Steph, why don't you go ahead and answer that? And then
So I will answer that. Mayor Hall, you know this more than many of your colleagues because you serve on this agency. You don't start going to the board about ballot measures before you adopt the plan. Once the plan is adopted, there will be a process where, I mean, it is not a staff decision to put a ballot measure for the voters. It is the board decision to do that. Yes, we are assuming, let me just remind all of you that we have a federal requirement, and this plan has to go through the state and federal requirement. The federal requirement said you have to identify reasonably available funding, and you have to show how you're going to pay for the plan. This is a requirement. This is no joke. And so all of this menu of option is to meet that requirement. Now, the processes of how we go about that, of course, but you don't do that before you adopt the plan. It will be really not logical for us to start talking about sales tax measures when you don't have the blueprint adopted.
Well, I would think just from a timing perspective, if you want to do it in 2022, there's a certain time frame you have to get this done. And I would think if we are proposing it, you would be well on your way to making that happen. And it surprises me that you say that this is something we're going to think about, the board's going to come up with, and so on and so forth. You would think it'd be part of the plan that we're discussing today. So I've got a lot more comments. I would echo Mayor Gasterlin. We've put in a real detailed letter also, and I would like to, but I guess I don't have time to go into the Palomar corridor and some of the deficiencies there and so on and so forth. So I will save it for a later date, but I just want to leave us with one thought. Our credibility is at stake at this moment in time. And so how we as individuals move forward with this, or who we choose to work with, there's a lot at stake here, a lot at stake.
Okay, thank you. I know Gary Bonelli has had his hand up a really long time, so go ahead, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, speaking on behalf of the Port of San Diego and the regional plan, we're very supportive of the Harbor Drive 2.0. It's a great example of a multimodal corridor that will benefit not only people movement, but goods movement, and it really help out the Barrio Logan, National City, Chula Vista, and the South Bay. Also, we're very supportive of the goods movement to keep the rail line open, to get it into a tunnel to get more efficiency out of the north-south rail line. And that's from the port's perspective. From my personal perspective, having a little bit of history here with Sandag and as a member of your transportation committee, listening to my fellow board members out there, we know that trying to create this plan in a dynamic, complex living environment and it's sort of a politically charged era, it's very difficult. The point that Mayor Salas makes about change in entrepreneurship and innovation, keep in mind that by the year 2050, 30 years from now, half the people working out there in their jobs, they'll be working in jobs that don't exist today. So it just goes to the rapidity of change, how quickly we're changing. I salute Sandag and their plan for the outstanding work they've done on the equity front and sustainability. They've been very, very transparent. Hassan's been brutally honest about the costs and what this plan will cost. However, when it gets right down to it, most residents want less traffic congestion. Yes, they're worried about climate, the reality of climate change, sea level rise, but they're looking at less traffic congestion. When I've participated in the public workshops, heard a lot of different comments, and then you posed 2 questions. And the questions are, what do you like most about the plan and what do you like least? What I like most about the plan is it's a plan. If I read the tea leaves right, you're going to have the votes to move this plan forward. It's going to keep federal and state dollars flowing into our region. That's important. What I like least about the plan, it's too slow to implement and way, way too costly. And I have all the respect in the world for Sandag staff, having been part of that organization for a number of years. However, we're listening to the strongest voices on the regional plan, people that are transit, bicycle, walking, jobs, environmental advocates, and God love them for their passion and being involved in the plan. Just to point out to our fellow directors, we've come full circle. Back in 1975, a visionary like Hassan, a guy by the name of Dick Huff, the first executive director of Sandag, came up with a plan, a heavy rail plan matrix throughout the county. People said, "Are you smoking dope? A heavy rail plan is going to cost several $1 billion. How can that be?" Dick was way ahead of his time. But then the 13 cities and the county that comprise Sandag were refused to modify their land use policies, and that several $1 billion heavy matrix rail system went down the drain. And this is even before Peter Calthrop came up with the phrase of transit-oriented development. Yes, Sandag has delivered hundreds, maybe thousands of projects, programs, and service. However, during the ensuing 45 years and many subsequent RTPs and billions of dollars spent, traffic congestion in our living environment has gotten only worse. That's the reality of less hassle-free living. Now it's up to our 18 cities, the county, and our 10 advisory agencies who all have land use powers. The strength of Sandag and all of its 29 agencies is they sit at the same planning table. However, the weakness, as you hear time and time again, is there is no regional constituency. You're involved about your community, your city, maybe your sub-region, but you really have a hard time connecting the dots to provide a regional network. I think, picking up on what Mayor Salas is saying, the future is for men and women entrepreneurs and a good old American ingenuity to look at what we can do with what we have. When I look at the alternative analysis, I'm in favor of alternative 2, working on the system we have, getting the most out of it, doubling or tripling the ability in our corridors to get people and goods through that. Thank you for your time. And my hope is that by the year 2050, if I understand what Ray Major tells me, as far as demographics, our population is going to slow down enough that we may be able to catch our breath. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Councilmember Shu.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to give recognition to all the public members who have made comments, and I want to give at least my appreciation for participating in this long process. I also want to make note that this RTP is 2 years behind schedule, but this RTP is different from previous ones. It's made a significant change in direction, and I applaud Hassan and staff for making this change. Going this new direction is, I think, very significant and important for so many of us in our community and for our future. To make this short, I want to ask some quick questions of Lee Majors and Colleen, and you can keep your answers short if you can. One is, who's been paying for our roads in the past and currently? Are we fully paying for our roads? And Lee, maybe you have some quick answers for us. One quick answer is, has our gas tax been paying for our road system developing, and has it paying for all of it or how much of it?
No, the gas tax does not fully pay for the infrastructure, but the gas tax does go to paying for the roads. So
Correct.
It does not fully pay for that.
Right. So this was under the belief that users should pay their way, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
The more you drive, the more gas you use, the more you pay into the gas tax. But when did that stop happening in terms of paying its own way?
I don't know the exact time that it stopped happening, but we're at a point in time now as we move towards electrification of the fleet where the gas vehicles are paying, or the electric vehicles, as people are not paying their fair share in terms of maintenance. And we need to find an alternative to the gas tax to be able to continue to do the maintenance of the roads. Yeah, and the more fuel efficient cars also, the people who are driving more fuel efficient cars pay less to use the roads than those people who have less fuel efficient cars.
Correct. And one of our main thrusts of this board is to try to address equity. So is that equitable if people that are have more fuel efficient cars or electric cars are not paying as much as those who are paying driving less fuel efficient cars?
No, there is a social equity issue that's wrapped into this because people who earn less money usually drive cars that are less fuel efficient. They're driving older model cars that are less expensive, and those cars are more expensive to drive.
Correct. So would you say a road usage fee would be more equitable and actually help poor people more than our current system?
Well, a road user fee is more equitable in the sense that there's a nexus between how much somebody is driving on the road and how much they're paying. You don't see that as much with the gas tax, just because of the fact that the vehicles are all different. Okay, so different people going 10 miles using different types of vehicles right now pay different types of fees. But you can make it much more equitable if we're charging per mile, because then you can make adjustments, for instance, for income.
Correct. So
Councilmember Shu, just to make that point, if your question is, are low-income communities paying more now because they drive inefficient car compared to electric or more efficient car? Yes, absolutely. The existing system is not equitable, and the user-based system will overcome some of that. Even on top of that, we need to design a system that makes sure that the poor doesn't get hurt even further.
Correct. That was going to actually my second question. We don't need to go into the methodologies, but there are ways to adjust for people who are very poor that have to drive. And lastly, there's a lot of talk of VMT reduction. This plan uses various mechanisms, including road use fee, as well as high occupancy lanes to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So Colleen, the state that's asking us to reduce vehicle miles traveled per capita, correct? How much do we have to reduce?
So the state law really is about greenhouse gas emissions, but the way you do that, the calculation that the state requires does look at reductions in vehicle miles traveled. So they put those two things together. And I think it's important that it's not just about charging for use of the system. It's also really important that we get people closer so trips are shorter. So that's another aspect, and why the land use component is so important in all of this, that we're focusing our growth and development in areas where there truly are travel options for people to take public transit, to walk, to bike, to car share, to use a flexible fleet, and making that convenient and accessible and safe to where it's even more convenient than getting in your car and driving somewhere, because you don't have to worry about parking, and things are frequent, they're fast, and people feel safe using that. So I think that's just an important aspect that sometimes gets lost as we talk about the infrastructure and the transportation. The land use is equally important, and that is part of what Sandag has to show in our plan to the state of California to get that approved.
Correct. So we're asking the agencies that have land use authority to work with this plan to reduce that vehicle miles traveled, which means general plans and land use plans have to change at the county and city levels. Thank you. I think is a very important point. We have that job. Our board of supervisors have that job. Our city councils have that job to change our land use plans to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions to conform with the plan that Sandag has. And I don't want to go much further, but I want to just make the point that this plan it is a change from our future past. We need to check on reality. The reality is that widening roads does not work, has not worked. Induced demand is a real issue, and know that that's not how we want to go in the future. We need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And that's why this plan, I think, is really going in the correct direction. I hope it goes faster. I hope that we do have these pilot programs in our mobility hubs, and that we make those pilot programs work today and tomorrow, so we could implement it within a very short time and make our communities work well. So we have a healthier community as well as reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you so much. I know we're past time, so thank you for indulging me.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Got it. I had a lot I want to say, but I've been just crossing things out because I want to have respect for time. So I'll quickly try to summarize my comments. So the City of Oceanside is extremely concerned with the proposed plan and draft EIR's failure to identify funding for two desperately needed regional transportation projects. Number one is the I-5 HOV lanes from the 78 to Vandergrift, identified and labeled as I-5 HOV lanes, and number two, the I-5 and SR-78 interchange. I'll start with I-5 HOV lanes from the 78 to Vandergrift. The draft EIR states that the proposed I-5 HOV lanes project will be implemented by year 2025. However, to date, Sandag has yet to allocate funding or support on this major freeway improvement project's design. It is imperative that the proposed project not only remain on the proposed plan's list of projects, but also receive adequate funding and commitment from Sandag to bring the project to fruition, especially if the draft EIR analysis relies on it. With the year 2025 nearly 3 years away, it is unrealistic and disingenuous for Sandag to continue stating that the project will be delivered on time. Next, most important project here in North County is I-5 and the SR-78 interchange. The proposed interchange project would establish a much needed connection between the west and east side of I-5 at the 78 interchange. Under existing conditions, there is no safe access for bicyclists and pedestrians across I-5 in this area. Similar to the I-5 and the I-5 HOV lanes project, the draft EIR identifies and relies on this project's for the EIR. However, Sandag has not formally appropriated the funding needed to implement it by 2025. My staff reiterated these comments from the city to Sandag, and I know you're going to respond to those by November 30th, so I don't need a response necessarily right now from staff to save time. I do want to make brief comments because there's a lot of comments and a lot of themes surrounding equity and the environment. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. And so what I'd like to start out by saying is climate change calls for adaptation and balance, not panic and fear. What do I mean by that? Well, let me go over some data and facts, and I would love to sit down with some of my colleagues or the public in a productive conversation. During the 30 years that countries have been setting GHG emission reduction targets, global emissions have risen by 60%. More recently, from 2009 to 2019, emissions rose from 29.7 billion tons to 34.2 billion tons, a 15% increase. During the more recent period, the countries of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, reduced their emissions. However, non-OECD emissions grew by almost 10 times the reduction in emissions achieved by the OECD countries. So pretty much there's countries that are not participating on efforts to counter global warming. And those regions now produce 65% of the world's emissions. The United States, with less than 15% of global emissions, because it's a global problem, ladies and gentlemen, is a bystander at best, while China accounts for 30%. The mistake that many make is to simply say that they don't believe global warming is happening. The overwhelming scientific research confirms that global warming is in fact happening. Client scientists are just not sure on what extent, and estimations and opinions vary widely because of this uncertainty. So to me, and to many of the constituents I represent, spending billions of dollars locally to over mitigate a problem that we're merely a bystander on doesn't make sense at the expense of our region. California is a prime example of short-sighted and unrealistic policy decisions in all major areas of society, from public safety, quality of life, housing allocation, schools, business, labor, transportation, and the environment. The policies are all geared toward bigger government, massive spending, massive taxation to fund special interest elites at the expense of hardworking Californians.
Councilmember,
next,
you start to wrap up, please, sir. We have some more speakers.
Absolutely. I will wrap this up right now. I want to end with one last item, a report. Most climate change activists do not understand the impossibility of achieving a net zero due to current technologies and limited supplies of green exotic minerals and metals, even if it was worth trying to do so. I encourage them to review the paper by Cambridge University Emeritus Professor of Technology, Michael Kelly, which shows that replacing just the United Kingdom's 32 million light-duty vehicles of the 1.42 billion cars in operation worldwide with next-generation EVs would require incredibly vast quantities of materials that do not exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. As if you couldn't figure it out yourself, I'm not Chair Blakespear. She had to move on to another event. You're left with me. I apologize in advance. Let's try and power through the remaining board comments. We still have some potential community member comments and maybe another agenda item. So let's stay focused. I'm sure you're all hungry. Second Vice Chair, Alejandro Sotelo Solis, and then we'll go to Gustavo Dalar.
Okay, thank you again, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. My comments are, compañeros, this is the time for change. This is our vision to help our future really create a more healthy, a cleaner, more united and connected region. We have to have vision, and that's why we were elected in these roles. So from February 2019, we've had the conversations of what we envision as a region to make all those things happen. Is it going to cost money? Damn right it is. But it's that investment. We put our money where our mouth is. We make it happen because it matters to us. It matters to have that connectivity. It matters to Mother Earth that we lower our greenhouse gas emissions. So from the community charrettes that I know each one of us has pushed, whether it be virtual, attending events, at the various community spaces, and creating bilingual, multilingual spaces. The community has provided that input. We are very close to creating a plan that we can be proud of, but also to leave a legacy for the future generations. We can't say we want some things, but we can't do this. We like this, but we don't want this. Because it should be about how do we get to that yes? Because ultimately the technology will meet those needs. We don't know everything, true, but we have to think visionary. And this RTP is worth doing and worth doing right. I want to thank staff again for helping to really capture all of the ideas from the 1,000 people that submitted comments online on the RTP in writing, but also through those community charrettes as well. And for the community, for being consistent in the messaging to creating accessible mass transit. And is everybody gonna hop on a bus tomorrow? No, but we're gonna make it a lot sexier, a lot smoother, a lot faster and more convenient so that it can be that option. the better option. And again, the goal is by 2030, we make it free for everyone. Lastly, I just want to say that as data-driven decision makers, with this 2021 RTP, which will sunset in 2050, so we have quite some time to see it in its lifetime. We want, and we said we wanted outcomes that are still, works in progress because we're still getting the detail down. But we want outcomes that we can point to that are measurable because we each have our climate action plans that we have to achieve. We also have, the equity lens that really takes into account those communities that have been, disadvantaged when it's come to mass transit as well as freeways, coming through the neighborhoods. So this really is an opportunity to make a difference, to be bold, to be strong. And I can't wait till we have the continued conversation in December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go now to Caltrans. Gustavo.
Thank you, Mayor Gloria. So the Department of Transportation, we sent a 4-letter page in response to the RTP. You can look at attachment 1 is on page 345, so I won't go through all of it. I'll just mention briefly that we support this plan. This plan is in alignment with state goals, and we've been working together collaboratively with SANDAG staff on the development of this plan for the last couple of years. So I want to thank Ray and Colleen and the rest of the SANDAG staff for taking our input during that time and incorporating that input as part of the plan. And I wanted to address, so I wanted to make sure that that's known because it almost sounded from one of the earlier comments that Caltrans hasn't been part of this, and we have. And I wanted to address specifically the issue about the shoulder conversions. There are many parts in our county, as well as other parts of the state, where we don't have shoulders and we have lanes in those areas. So this is not something new. This is the reality that sometimes you have to, although you would want to have full shoulders in general, sometimes you have to make some trade-offs and utilize that space for something else. And that is the reality that if we want to complete our managed lane network in this county, we're going to have to do a lot of shoulder conversions. Shoulder conversions do not require legislation, but they do require engineering studies to make sure that we address safety issues, drainage issues, and those considerations have been fully vetted with SANDAG staff, and the investments required to turn those shoulders into lanes are included in the regional plan. So in the cost of the projects of the shoulder conversions, those costs are already addressed in there. Obviously, the details are for each individual project are going to have to be studied further in environmental documents pursuant to CEQA and NEPA. But we are fully on board with a plan put forward, particularly for 5 big moves and the complete corridors portions of that. And we are fully aware that in some areas, even to complete the managed lane network, we may have to convert some general purpose lanes into managed lanes. Now, for that, we will require legislation, and we will work through those details in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Gustavo. I see other members of the board seeking recognition. I just want to conclude with expressing my appreciation to staff, as well as the members of the public who joined us today. This is a massive undertaking. It's taken a couple of years now, as you saw from the timeline that was in the staff report, and we're not done yet. Obviously, we'll have the opportunity to continue to discuss this matter through December, when this board will be asked to make a decision. I believe today's conversation will help advance making that decision, in part because we're able to spend a fair amount of time discussing important issues, educating the public, fellow board members. And again, I look forward to that conversation. I will just note that this plan presents a grand vision with some extremely large moves, and we're changing the way that we've done things in the past. Big changes are understandably difficult, and they certainly will have opponents, but I, for one, am committed to this vision. It is necessary for the protection of our economy, our environment, and our climate. And while there may be details that we'll have to continue to work on, specifically, I would like staff to respond in writing to Councilmember LaCava's concerns about SR 52. I believe you're all aware of that, and just appreciate it if you could get back to him and the concerns from the community. But in the overall grand scheme of things, this plan is headed in the right direction. There was a lot of after actions of the previous regional transportation plan, feeling as though it didn't embrace the future. This one clearly does. There are questions, specifically about the road user charge. I would remind folks, so the road user charge was in the existing regional transportation plan. It's a part of this regional transportation plan. Unlike some of the news reports I've seen, it is not happening today, tomorrow, or next year. The earliest could be 2030. Staff can correct me, but I believe that this may require an act of Congress and the state legislature before we could actually even do this. And no one is proposing doing this without robust transportation alternatives. So this isn't solely doing it for the sake of doing it. This is to provide actual options to folks. And lastly, as many people have said, and something I would be very supportive of, is it would be done while removing the gas tax, because it's quickly becoming an effective means of financing our infrastructure. But financing will be a conversation, and we should have that conversation. I think a lot of times folks here and in other settings like to have their cake and eat it too. Well, we have to pay for stuff, and that's fiscally responsible. And to pass a plan of this magnitude without identifying reasonable solutions, even if they don't come to pass, that would be irresponsible. And the days of irresponsible financing at Sandag are over. So let us be clear with the public on what we're trying to accomplish. Let's be honest when explaining to people what we're talking about and when. But most importantly, let's make sure that we get the change that San Diegans are demanding. I think Gary Benelli mentioned it exactly right. People hate traffic. The fact of the matter is that's not going to get any better if we continue to persist with the status quo. Rejecting a 20th century vision and embracing a 21st century vision will help address traffic congestion, will help meet our obligations under state and federal law, will help improve quality of life. And I think for everyone here, and there is a divide on this board, I want to acknowledge that. I think everyone on this board can appreciate and embrace the fact that we need to grow our economy and create jobs for San Diegans, good paying jobs that can support themselves and their families. I believe this plan is capable of doing that, and that's why I'm supportive of it. I look forward to additional conversation. And for the members of the public who ran out of time today, please submit your comments in writing. They'll be made a part of the official record of today's discussion. With that said, we'll consider this item discussed. Colleen, Ray, thank you very much. We will, the executive director has indicated that he is going to waive item number 2 on our agenda because he is that smart, everybody. So we will take up that item at our next meeting. We'll go back to the clerk because I believe we may have, actually, I should maybe take member comments at this time. I'm going in order. So we've done items 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're at 5 for member comments. Any board members have any comments they wish to make at this time? You want lunch, I get it. How about any additional non-agenda comments? Does the clerk have anyone who we have held over from this morning?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to ask the members of the public who had their hand raised for non-agenda public comment, if you could re-raise your hand at this time, if you'd still like to make those comments. I'll call on you in the order in which I see your hands. I'd also like to remind you that unfortunately we cannot speak on item 3 any longer. If you'd like to submit comments via writing, you're welcome to do that, but these must be items that are not on the agenda. So I'll go to Kelly Hesdall first, who will be followed by Gary Whaley. Kelly, you can go ahead whenever you're ready. Kelly, you can go ahead. You have 3 minutes, but I would ask you to please be as brief as possible, just since we are past our meeting time already. Kelly, you're currently self-muted. I'm going to go on to Gary Whaley and then we'll come back to Kelly. Gary, you can go ahead when you're ready. My apologies. I'm not sure what's happening. It looks like everybody's having technical difficulties. Let's move on to Harry Orgoven. Harry, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. I found the conversations very interesting today, and I would just like to speak to the whole project. One of my concerns about the whole project is trying to build up along the coastline. This is what I would call urban creep. And it seems like we're going to be putting more and more pressure on our coastline reserve, refuge habitats along the bay and along the ocean. And I'm a little worried about that urban creep and how it does affect those refuges and what their purpose was supposed to be. Also, I would like to point out that when you start digging along these transportation corridors, there's some big problems there with the base fill. It's a very polluted materials in some cases, and this is going to need to be addressed from these hazardous materials that were laid down initially. And I would like to point out that maybe not a by mile charge might not be good, but making it a simplified version of a county-wide tax, since this is sort of a county thing, but connected with our registration of our cars. And I don't know the implications of that, because I feel if we just put it in the registration, the funds would get utilized more by the state versus what we're trying to propose here. But if there is a way to implement it rather for San Diego County, I feel that could fulfill our needs without addressing so many complicated things to charge by mile. And that concludes my points, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Chair, I'm going to try and go back to Kelly and Gary. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get their comments on the record, but I'll definitely follow up with them if not. Kelly, you can go ahead whenever you're ready. You are self-muted at the moment.
Let's invite Kelly to send us an email, perhaps with her comments.
That sounds good. And Gary, I know that you sent me an email as well. I saw it pop up into my inbox, so I will reach out to both of you and just make sure that your comments are on the record for this meeting. And Chair, I think that wraps us up.
Very good. Thank you, Francesca. You are a patient person. That brings us to 6 on our agenda, upcoming meetings. The board meeting originally scheduled for Friday, November 5th, 2021 has been canceled. So the next board of directors meeting is Friday, November 19th, 2021 at 9 a.m. With that said, we're a bit over and I apologize for that, but this is big stuff and I appreciate everyone hanging there with us. So we'll stand adjourned until our meeting on the 19th. Thanks, everybody.